Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to the channel. This is my new channel, so please support us. Now let's start today's story on what if Harry fell in love with Katie Bell. But before we begin, comment 4 blue hearts. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. Also, watch till the end because this story is going to be amazing. And don't forget to check out our Patreon for exclusive Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy versions, link is in the description. Now, let's begin the story. Oliver Wood had been awake since 5. He didn't set an alarm on match days. Hadn't since 3rd year. His body just knew. He dressed in the dark, pulled on a jumper and his old training trousers, and slipped out of the dormitory without waking anyone. Percy Weasley muttered something about cauldron thickness in his sleep but didn't stir. The castle was quiet at this hour. Filch was somewhere on the 3rd floor. Oliver could hear Mrs. Norris's claws ticking on stone 2 corridors away, but the caretaker had stopped challenging him on match mornings years ago. They had an understanding. Oliver didn't track mud through the entrance hall. And Filch decided that he wasn't worth the effort to chase away. The pitch was barely visible in the pre-dawn murk. Rain had been falling since midnight. The wind came from the northwest. It would be in his face in the first half if Hooch set them up the usual way. Oliver walked the length of the field, feeling the ground give under his boots. The grass would be slick and the quaffle would be like a bar of soap. He stopped at the center circle and looked up at the hoops. His hoops. 3 tall shadows against a gray sky. He'd defended them for 6 years and this was the start of his last 3 matches. That was all he had left. Make them count, Wood. He checked the wind one more time, pulled his jacket tighter, and walked back toward the castle. Breakfast wouldn't start for another hour. But the kitchens would be open. Punky always had porridge ready early for him on match days. A door opened and light spilled across the path. Filch stepped out and took a breath, a steaming cup in his hand. Oliver nodded as he passed. Filch smirked but didn't speak. There wasn't anything to say at 5 in the morning that the match wouldn't say much louder. Quidditch. The twins were first. They were usually first on match days, which was ironic given they were last to everything else. Fred had his beater's bat over one shoulder like a broadsword. George munched on toast. Morning, Captain. Fred dropped onto the bench and inspected his bat grip. Lovely weather for it. Gorgeous, Oliver agreed. Don't get crumbs on your equipment, George. You represent Gryffindor today. It's Fred. No, it isn't. George grinned and kept eating. Alicia arrived next, already in her armor but with her robes over her shoulder, hair pulled back tight. She sat in the corner and began tea. Oh, stretch her hamstrings with only a nod in recognition to Oliver. Alicia didn't talk before matches anymore. She hadn't since her 3rd year, when she'd been sick on Katie's boots after nattering non-stop for 20 minutes. Katie had forgiven her after several cleaning charms. Alicia's pre-match nerves had not. Angelina came in with her game face on, jaw set and eyes squinted slightly. Her braids were pinned flat against her skull so the wind couldn't catch them. She sat beside Alicia and the two of them exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. Katie was last. She shoved the door open with her hip. Hair half up and half escaped. She looked flustered but that was pretty common for her. She was a different beast on her broom, quaffle in hand. I'm here, don't start without me. Oliver smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. She dropped onto the bench next to Harry, bumped his shoulder with hers, and glanced at the high window where rain was streaming down the glass and huffed out a sigh. Lovely. Harry had been present when Oliver had arrived. He had been sitting very still, and had barely moved since. He stared at his glasses, turning them slowly between his fingers. His Nimbus broomstick hovered just in front of him, and rotated slowly. Oliver looked at his team. 6 people. 6 friends. 6 Gryffindors. 6 years of work. He waited until the last strap was buckled, the last glove was tugged on. He stood. This is it, the big one. The one we've all been waiting for. Heads rose and they ceased all movement. We've done the work. You know the plan. You know the plays. Nothing out there is new to us. He nodded towards the door. It's foul weather. So what? We've trained in worse. It's Hufflepuff. They'll grind. They'll wait for mistakes. They'll try tea. Oh, wear us down and tell themselves that's enough. They aren't the claws with their clever tricks. They aren't the snakes with their racing brooms and their dirty tactics, they're just steady puffs. Angelina's mouth set into a thin line and stared at him with a penetrating gaze. Alicia rubbed her hands together once and stilled. They want us frustrated. They want us rushing. They want us blaming the rain, the wind, the ref, each other. And hoping we don't notice when they nick a few goals. Wood shook his head. We don't give them that. He stood, his voice grew in volume and intensity. We play our game. Keep the passes sharp. Make calls and change plays at the right time. We trust each other, trust to your fellow chaser to be beside you, your beater to have your back, your seeker to run. His interference play and know when to end it and your keeper to back you all up. You miss one, someone's there. You go down, someone covers. No sulking, no rage, no anger, we play clean and we play hard. He looked at them one by one. You fly honest. You back the red robe next to you, and you let them back you. The wind surged outside, rattling the locker room hard enough to make the walls vibrate. When we're done, I want the 7 of us walking off that pitch knowing that we gave everything. No excuses left in the air with the rain. He paused. And if we do that, we win. He drew a Brea. And brought his fist up, then held it out, and they surged to their feet. For Gryffindor. 6 fists met his. For Gryffindor. Wood turned and hauled the door open. The storm came crashing in. Rain hit them sideways. The roar of the crowd hit them from above. Oliver stepped out onto the grass and the wind tried to shove him back through the door. He walked. Running looked desperate. He walked like he owned the place. This was his Quidditch pitch. His stadium. For one last year. The pitch opened up before him, vast and gray and loud. The stands were a blur of color, red and gold to the left, yellow and black to the right. Green and blue filling in everywhere else. Banners snapped and twisted. Someone had enchanted a lion to prowl along the Gryffindor railing. It roared every few seconds. Sparks scattered from its mane and faded in the rain. Lee Jordan's voice cut through the noise. And here they are. Gryffindor. Wood leading them out, looking characteristically intense. Oliver lifted his broom to his shoulder, set his jaw against the weather, and walked his team to the center circle where a drenched Madam Hooch and 7 yellow-clad Hufflepuffs were already waiting. He shook Diggory's hand. Oliver liked Cedric. Honest player, decent captain, but not enough killer instinct. Not enough to beat Oliver. Good luck, Wood. You too, Diggory. You'll need it. Cedric smiled. Who? Chi's whistle cut through the rain and 15 brooms rose into the sky. Quidditch. The wind rattled the 3 Quidditch goal posts in their sockets buried deep in the ground. Oliver Wood was the only one close enough to hear as he circled to maintain a central position. An involuntary shiver ran through him as he eyed the approaching Hufflepuff attack. Today was not a day for keepers. The Hufflepuff against Gryffindor grudge match. Oliver thought with a snort, every Hogwarts Quidditch game is a grudge match. The game had been going for just under 2 hours. With a score of 200 to Gryffindor, 170 to Hufflepuff, all was still to play for. Oliver had exhorted his team to greater efforts during the first hour, and they responded well, scoring 4 unanswered goals before Hufflepuff had found some gumption. Unfortunately, Katie Bell had been caught by a bludger on her left ankle and had slowed appreciably. Just as Oliver would have done, Hufflepuff took full advantage of the hamstrung Red Chaser unit, and clawed their way back into the game. Madam Hooch had called a medical timeout and ordered Katie to descend to a scowling Madame Pomfrey. 10 minutes later, with Katie back on her broom and Pepper up steam trailing in her wake, the game had resumed. Katie scored 2 quick goals and swept past the Gryffindor supporters' bleachers in an attempt to raise a cheer and chant from her housemates. Oliver agreed. They needed the support. He wiped a waterfall from his face with an equally wet hand, then focused back on the game. He sniffed in disgust at the fact they were not steamrolling the yellow-bellied Badgers and looked around for his young seeker. He spotted him high above, circling lazily. Oliver waited for Harry's circuit to bring the Gryffindor posts into his line of vision and held his arm out to the side, touched it to his broom, then tapped his head. Harry glanced around to check his surroundings. Even at this distance, the smirk on the little Thunderbolt's face was as clear as day. Quick as a flash, he spun on the spot and sped towards the Hufflepuff posts, rapidly becoming a red streak. The agreed-upon arm signal was part of a PLA. book they had drilled on endlessly in all weathers, instigated by calls, moves by opposing players, arm signals or phases of the game. Oliver had waited until Harry had been facing him. The Badgers' Chaser Wedge had just passed halfway in possession of the quaffle, and unseen a Gryffindor chaser loitered beneath the group. Angelina had tried this 3 times now and had waited for this exact situation. But other factors had prevented Oliver from calling it. Potter has seen the snitch. Lee Jordan shouted excitedly from his position in the commentary box next to Professor McGonagall and Evan Jones. A 5th year in the Hufflepuff commentator. No, he hasn't, argued Jones. That's a feint. Oliver smirked. It really didn't matter if no one believed that Potter was faking or if everyone ought it with a year's supply of honeydukes, finest for their girlfriend. The skill and speed of the charge drove Harry through the middle of the Hufflepuff chasers and caused them to drop the quaffle. Angelina Johnson plucked the falling ball from the air at speed and headed towards the rapidly paling Hufflepuff keeper and his right-hand hoop. Alicia swooped beneath Angelina as she dropped the quaffle into her teammate's waiting hand. And Alicia drove hard at the left-hand hoop. It would have looked to Herbert Fleet that Alicia had appeared out of nowhere. They bamboozled Oliver 5 times OU. T of 10 in training, and he knew what they were planning. Alicia's shot ricocheted in off the metal hoop and Gryffindor cheers overtook the wind. Potter dives through the hawkhead formation, spooking the Hufflepuff chasers and causing Appleby to drop the quaffle. Johnson swoops back towards the Hufflepuff end and snaffles the quaffle. Possession Gryffindor. She's dropped it herself. No. Angelina. No. What a move. Spinnet has it. Go Alicia. Spinnet scores. 210 to 170. Brilliant feint by Potter, who set that move up, clearly a planned move by the beautiful Gryffindor chasers. Angelina told me all about that one. She said. Jordan. Minerva McGonagall interrupted her charge. You will not give away training secrets to the opposition in your excitement. J. Orden blushed and dropped his head bashfully. Right you are, Professor. Sorry, Professor. Embarrassment was a temporary condition for Lee at the best of times, and he moved on. Potter had sold a brid. GE to the entire stadium with that feint there. Good lad. Hufflepuff have collected the quaffle and are on the move again. Evan Jones took over the running commentary. They've adopted the rotating line maneuver to keep the Gryffindors guessing. Oh, poor handling by Priest there. He dropped the quaffle as he was avoiding a bludger. Surely that's a foul, ref. Jones. You are not a referee. That's not your call. McGonagall interrupted again. Just comment on the players, please. I was, Professor. Jones defended himself. Malcolm Priest has recovered the quaffle, and the pass goes to McAvoy. But the move is a bust as the Gryffs are in a catch-pull defensive line. Tough break there, Puffs. Oliver allowed himself a smirk in celebration as the shot flew wide, having been forced out of position by an aggressive Katie Bell-Weasley bludger combination. The catch-pull defense was a professional-level tactic, but required perfect timing or the chaser would be catching the bludger instead. The lovely Scottish weather took the opportunity to deliver a blast of ice-laden wind across the pitch, causing every player and Madam Hooch to turn their heads away. Angelina recovered the quaffle and slowed near Oliver. Midas, she asked him. Scramble, I think, keep Midas for the claws game. Fade left to right, so Harry knows, Oliver replied. They grinned at each other as Alicia and Katie joined their conference. Oliver addressed them, scramble, fade left to right. Mess with the quaffle enough to let Harry in front of you. Oliver looked up for his beaters. Weasley, he bellowed. Every eye in the stadium turned to him. And he rubbed the back of his head vigorously with his left hand. 3 nods from his chasers were his only confirmation, and in a tight wedge to protect the quaff. They circled the posts and hustled down the pitch from the left corner on the far side of the pitch to the bleachers, aiming for the right side. Oliver saw Harry circle around behind Diggory, who feinted unconvincingly. But stopped as he heard a gasp from the crowd. Harry had reversed course and made a run over the top of the Gryffindor chasers at breakneck speed. And Jordan began, but was overridden by Evan Jones. Wood has called another play. Watch out, Seed. Potter's off again. Scramble. Angelina called out and slowed a hair. Katie dropped behind. Alicia sped up to sweep in front of her fellow chasers. One of the defending chasers banked to pass through the space above and behind her to cut off the pass, but Angelina swerved to evade a bludger and hurled the quaffle forward to Alicia. Judged perfectly to pass just over her shoulder. The dimpled ball bounced off her broom handle, where she snagged the quaffle on the rebound. Fake out. Jordan crowed. Johnson has sold the stadium another dummy. She launches forward to spin it and, what's this? He cut himself off in shock, trying to figure out how to explain the mayhem before him. Harry picked his moment very well. Olive. Slammed a fist into an open palm in delight. Diggory had followed him, impeding his own chasers. Harry wove his way through the puff defense at a frightening pace, Alicia tucked right behind him. Her throwing arm cocked back in preparation. Gryffindor scores. Potter makes himself a nuisance again and leads Spinnet well into shooting range. She lobs towards the far hoop. Fleet was unsighted as he avoided Potter's charge. Lee's voice rose above the storm, rapid and delighted. Timeout. Cedric Diggory called towards Madam Hooch, and she blew her whistle. 5 minutes, she declared and cast another warming charm as she headed towards the commentary box to have a word with a certain commentator. For those who have forgotten in all the excitement, the score stands at 220 to 170. Jordan announced to hide his glee at the lecture that Jones was currently receiving from a miffed Madam Hooch. The Gryffindor team gathered in the lee of the Gryffindor stand and high-fived each other. Bloody hell, I'm freezing, Katie complained. Ollie, we'll have to let Harry search for the snitch. I'm not sure how much longer my leg will hold out. They all looked at Harry. who had a serious look on his face. Oliver asked the question that was on all of their minds. Have you seen it yet, Harry? I've seen it twice now and Diggory has once. I went for it both times but lost it in the rain. It might have gone under the Ravenclaw stand, but I'm not sure. Okay Harry, Oliver sighed. Ideally, we need another 50 points to be in a better position for the cup. It will be tight if we don't. Slytherin will put 100 points on the Puffs if they get some luck and decent weather. He paused again and ran a hand down his tired face. We keep on. You girls are on fire. Up the speed and start running through the Ravenclaw plays. I'd rather we didn't have to, but we don't have much choice. You got it, Ollie, Katie agreed. If you can get me out of this crap weather, Harry. I'll kiss you, she half joked. The chorus of approval from Angelina and Alicia turned into laughter as Harry blushed bright red and started to stammer. George slung an arm across his shoulders, gesturing at Katie like a game show host. Just look at what you could win, young Potter, your very own slightly damp chaser for the low price of just one golden snitch. How about some extra motivation? Katie, a back rub. Just how grateful do you think you'll be? Fred continued the teasing. Harry by now looked like an overheated Muggle light bulb. Oliver took control of the huddle long enough to issue his orders. Okay team, enough of that. Let's leave it all on the field, they're tired now and flying on fumes. If we lift our game, they won't be able to stay with us. We know this, Puff team isn't that good, so keep changing the point of attack and call the plays as you see the space. Go with Midas, Angie, then Brooks and Tree. Fred, George, keep up the pressure on Diggory. He's their danger player and we need him as distracted as possible. Harry, make a couple of feints and keep an eye out, but we really need goals, so keep Diggory busy. We got this, Lions on 3, 1, 2, 3. The team nodded, and they put their hands in the middle and chanted, Lions. Madam Hooch has called the teams back to the middle of the pitch, bludgers are released, Quaffle is up and Potter's diving. No, it's a feint. Diggory didn't even follow him. Preece has the Quaffle, no. Evans gasped. A bludger almost took off his head, a Weasley twin, dunno which one. The Quaffle is loose and collected by Johnson, pass to Spinnet, pass to Bell. Bell is charging, Appleby is right beside her fighting for the Quaffle, careful Tammy, close to a foul there. She's dropped the Quaffle. Was that quaffing? The weather had eased during the opening few minutes of play, the wind had dropped to barely a whisper, and although the rain clouds overhead still loomed, the rain had stopped. You can tell Gryffindor has changed tactics. The Weasley twins are peppering Diggory with bludgers, which has caused O'Flaherty and Ricketts to break off and help him out, Jones said. This might backfire on Wood. The Puff chasers aren't pushovers. Yes, they are. Lee Jordan countered, the only thing that has kept them in the game is the bad weather and Katie carrying an injury. Lee must have been on the receiving end of a patented McGonagall glare as he changed the subject quickly. A Hawkhead arrow has formed to protect Spinnet. Nope, it broke up quickly there in some light of hand that has given Johnson a clear run on goal. No, Puff chaser within 10 meters of her. Score through the middle hoop after Fleet loses his grip on his broom and is left clinging to a hoop for dear life. Madam Hooch blew her whistle and summoned the keeper's broom back to him. She paused just long enough to ensure he was airborne again before she recommenced play by tossing the Quaffle high into the air. McAvoy secured the Quaffle from the outstretched fingers of Angelina Johnson and streaked down the pitch before lobbing a loose pass to Appleby, who took only her second shot of the game towards Oliver's right hoop. A dramatic spin and tail save sent the Quaffle flying off towards the Hufflepuff end, accompanied by a groan of dismay from the Hufflepuff students. That had been their first shot on goal for half an hour. Oh, so close there for Appleby, forcing a brilliant save from Wood, groaned Evans. A tail save has given Gryffindor a promising attack. Spinnet is way ahead of the chasing pack. And, his sharp intake of breath was joined by the supporters of every house. Alicia Spinnet had been winged by a bludger, just as she had been about to release the Quaffle. It flew wide as she struggled to control her disrupted broom. Angelina Johnson was the first to the Quaffle, but all the defending chasers had clustered around the hoops and she checked her charge to heave a pass across the field to Katie Bell on the far side. She was much closer and released the Quaffle just as Diggory dropped in front of her and knocked the Quaffle off course once again. Johnson has been checked by a solid Puff defense. She passes to Bell who shoots and a feint from Diggory has disrupted play again. The Quaffle is recovered by Bell and she weaves through heavy traffic but loses the Quaffle. No. A drop pass to Spinnet. What a goal from Alicia Spinnet, the Quaffle in her hand for less than a second. That is how you shoot from the hip. Lee Jordan was crowing again. Potter is diving again. He's weaving through bludgers. Has he seen the snitch? Evans questioned. Diggory seems to think so. He's hot on Potter's heels and catching him as he isn't having to dodge around bludgers. Jordan took over, head flicking between the seeker chase and the still developing chaser play. Hufflepuff on the charge, with Preece having won the 50-50 challenge with Spinnet, pass to McAvoy. To Appleby, back to Preece. He shoots score. Hufflepuff is back to 60 behind again. Jones was interrupted by a great shout by Lee Jordan, who was leaning far over the side of the box. Potter is under the stand. He's chasing something. It's the snitch. How the hell did he see it under there? Jordan exclaimed. Jordan, Professor McGonagall shouted, but he overrode her protest. There's a bludger after him. And Diggory is swooping in from the side. They're shoulder to shoulder. Arg, I can't see. Lee declared in dismay. Jones took up the commentary. They flew underneath and out the back. They're tussling over the top of the Slytherin stand. Duck. A student fell. Oh, it was only Malfoy. Shame he was caught by the net. This was met by shocked laughter from the stand. Jones. McGonagall interceded, shocked. Sorry, Professor. The chase has led them towards the Hufflepuff hoops. Now up. They're rising. No, they've pulled out of their climb, looking around. The snitch has disappeared again. Jones continued, disappointment clear in his voice. The quaffle is with Spinnet, pass to Johnson to Bell. Intercept by McAvoy and she's away. No, she isn't, clipped B. Y.A. Weasley bludger and she loses the quaffle. Recovered by Bell. To Johnson, she avoids a bludger from Rickett. Pass to Spinnet. Jordan said. Burst of acceleration there from Johnson, Preece right alongside. This is a great game the Puffs are having. They better play like this against the slimy. Jordan, commentator, I will replace you with Miss Brown. Professor McGonagall interrupted, incensed. Sorry, Professor. Jordan grimaced. Commentate only. Johnson to Bell, Potter is diving, Diggory right beside him. Perfect Wronski feint. Unfortunately, Diggory's was too. They both pull up, but what's this? They are both staring underneath the Ravenclaw bleachers. Mind the bludgers, Harry. And they're off, straight under the stands again. There's the snitch. Evans overrode Lee again. The charge is on across the pitch. Bludgers from both sets of beaters. Close one there, Seed. Come on. Johnson has the quaffle, streaking away. The Hufflepuff chasers have all been caught snitch gazing. She's one-on-one with Fleet. He is coming forward to narrow the gap. She'd passed him and scores. Angelina Johnson has bagged another. No. Diggory has been clipped on the leg by a Weasley bludger. He's losing ground. Potter is stretching. No. Evans groaned in dismay. Yes. Potter has the snitch. Lee Jordan cheer led the celebrating Gryffindor students as the raven-haired seeker peeled off from the chase, arm in the air. Gryffindor wins. 370 to 180. What a game. Yees. Oliver Wood almost fell off his broom, he cheered so hard. Hands back on. He sped towards the middle of the pitch on an intercept course with his team. Harry and the twins landed in a tangle of brooms as they embraced him and each other and screamed in joy. The chaser zoomed in and joined the huddle just before Oliver arrived, and for a few seconds it was just 7 soaking people in the mud, shouting over each other and grinning like idiots. You're some boy there, Potter. A Weasley exclaimed. Everyone beamed. The other brother whooped and grabbed Angelina in a big hug and kissed her. A Weasley caught Oliver's eye. Ollie, mate, are you crying? It's raining, Oliver said firmly. Want a hanky? Quote, I am not crying. It is raining. We are outside. In the rain. Right you are, Captain. The twin patted him on the shoulder with exaggerated sympathy. Just rain. Come on, Lions. Let's shake hands. They shouldered their brooms and turned toward the bleachers, where a group of defeated Hufflepuffs and a drenched Madam Hooch waited. Oliver sought out Diggory first. The Hufflepuff captain's robes were plastered to him and his hair was in his eyes, but he stuck his hand out without hesitation. Hell of a match, Wood. Your lot gave us more trouble than the scoreline says. Appleby was outstanding. Diggory blinked, surprised. Then he smiled properly. I'll tell her you said that. Congratulations, commiserations, and handshakes all around preceded a speech by their referee. I must say, students, that apart from the weather, that was one of the best games of school Quidditch that I have ever refereed, Hooch said. Very few fouls, no serious infractions. Some brilliant goals and a terrific snitch chase. Well done to both teams. It was a bedraggled group of teenagers who finally made it to the safety of the Quidditch locker room. One of the Weasleys cleared his throat and everybody turned towards him. There is a promise to fulfill, I believe, he regally stated, giving Katie the fish eye. His brother grinned and clamped a hand onto Harry's shoulder to prevent him from running away. The Hufflepuffs all looked confused, but the 5 older Gryffindors present all had malicious grins plastered on their faces. Katie sniffed. Not in front of you lot, she stated imperiously. She proceeded to raise an eyebrow and tapped a tiny size 3 Quidditch boot. "Ah, Katie," the other Weasley complained as he was shoved bodily through the boys' door by Oliver. The boys waited and stared at the closed door for a minute before it opened quietly and they could see Harry standing there and Katie entering the girls' locker room behind him. He had the biggest smile on his face Oliver had ever seen. Bigger than he had just sported winning the match. The whole room erupted in cheers as he walked forward and the door swung closed behind him. Half an hour spent in Madame Pomfrey's tender mercies delayed their arrival. The party was in full swing by the time the Gryffindor Quidditch team reached the portrait of the Fat Lady. The thump of music blasted through the canvas. Small blocks of cheese peeked out from the Fat Lady's ears. They were so effective that Oliver had to holler the password to open the way. As the portrait swung to the side, a wall of noise hit them in a shock wave. Oliver grimaced. "Merlin, that was loud." The twins exchanged a look, pulled their wands, and cast silencing charms on the frame, the back of the canvas, and the tunnel walls. The rest of the team left them to it and entered the common room to a massive cheer. Gryffindor Tower was rocking. Oliver turned to see if the twins were going to join them again. Once the team was complete, Oliver raised his hands for silence. The room fell silent. Their fellow Gryffindors stared at him with bated breath, some crouched, a few with clenched fists. The first years looked confused. Oliver clenched his fist and punched the air. "Gryffindor, Gryffindor." The common room answered, all but the first years. He punched the air again. "Gryffindor." The room shook with the explosion of noise and emotion. He punched the air for a third time. "Gryffindor." Everyone had taken up the battle cry now. The shrill voices of the first years stood out. Red-faced and panting, Oliver held his hand out for silence and composed himself. When the house didn't have the head boy or girl, the students deferred to the Quidditch captain. Oliver knew the other houses did it differently, but here, this year, he was top dog. "Ollie, you're not going to cry, are you?" A twin called from behind. "Shut up, George." "Griffs, I present your winning team, Alicia Spinnet." A massive cheer forced him to pause. Katie Bell, Angelina Johnson, Fred Weasley, George Weasley. Oliver Wood. George cut in. Another massive cheer rocked the common room. Oliver threw George an annoyed look. He'd wondered which twin would interrupt him, one of them always did. "Aunt." Oliver paused. "Harry Potter." The largest cheer of the night followed and it rolled on. Oliver grinned and turned to look at Harry. He had blushed bright red, but looked very pleased with himself. Oliver raised a hand again for quiet. "A good start to the year. Lots of work to do and a lot of Quidditch to play, but tonight, we have fun and celebrate." He threw both arms in the air to another massive cheer. With a flick of his wand, Lee Jordan turned the music back on, and Miles Owen levitated ice-cold bottles of butterbeer over to the team. Oliver turned back to his squad and gestured them closer so they could hear. "Go wild, kids, Sunday tomorrow, no school, no Quidditch, plus McGonagall told me that she was sleeping in her office tonight. Lions on 3, 1, 2, 3. Lions." The team chanted, clinked bottles together, and drank. It was a good start. Quidditch. About 3 hours later, the prefects shuffled the first and second years off to bed. Someone reduced the music to human hearing levels. No need to alarm a passing teacher or Filch if the twins' silencing charms failed. The drinking games began. Oliver sat on a sofa, wedged between a tipsy Emily Roberts and Alicia. This wasn't a quiet affair, it never was when Weasley twin drinking games were involved. Their fourth drinking game was called, The Drunk Pirate. A stack of cards sat on the table before the players. Everyone had to shout, "R," and drink when a card was drawn. The player who had picked up the card then had to do whatever the card instructed. Sarah Morris picked up a card. "R." Everyone drank and gazed at the sixth year, who was trying to focus on the card, forehead creased in concentration. "Take another drink," she cried. "R. You didn't drink enough, Allie." Fred pointed an accusing finger at the chaser. Alicia gave him the stink eye. "Piss off, Freddie, if I drink much more I'll be sick on your shoes." Fred's eyes widened in comical horror and he muttered something into his glass that they couldn't understand, which was probably for the better. Even the twins knew that it was a bad idea to annoy one of their chasers. George picked up a card. "R." Everyone drank. "Hum a song and the first to guess chooses who drinks next," George read out. He paused, then wagged a finger at the beat of the music in his head and started to hum and bob his head to his own tune. "The Little Cauldron." Two people shouted in glee. There was a brief silence, then sniggers followed. "Angie and Mikey can pick one each," George said. "I pick Angie." A tipsy Michael Brown shouted. "Well, I choose Mikey," Angelina retorted with a death glare. "Ah, shit," Michael cursed, and the group broke out into laughter. "R." They both drank. "'Scuse me," Oliver said and got up. I'm off to the little wizard's room. That sparked a mass exodus for the Luz. They had been drinking steadily for over an hour. The game died there. Quidditch. Ollie. We're organizing a pickup game Sunday. You in? Anita McDuff asked him on his way to his dorm. Quidditch was not just the sport of the Quidditch team, the general school. Population did more than just spectate. Every weekend, as long as the weather was good enough, Madam Hooch ran a Quidditch workshop so students not in a team could practice and play 30-minute long games in a mini-tournament. The snitch was bewitched to appear on Minute 29. In the preceding week the acting Quidditch captain had to announce the team name. She didn't require a complete team sheet as it regularly changed. Friendships, girlfriend trouble and homework were all variables too complicated to predict. Not this weekend, Nita, he told his fellow 7th-year Gryffindor. Quote, I've got some homework I want to get finished, I can't let it build up like I did last year. Dad keeps telling me there's more to life than Quidditch. You believe that? She asked him, smirking. Hell, no, but if I don't keep up, Dad and McGonagall will pull me off the team. Not happening, he replied with a shudder. Fair enough. There's a 3rd year, Davis, he has been asking to play Seeker. Might give him a go. Anita shrugged. Good. Let him fly. Can't hurt to have depth, Oliver said. Quidditch. On his return, Oliver wandered past the fireplace. Movement in his peripheral vision made him do a double take. Wedged into a wingback armchair were Harry and Katie, their faces very close together, Katie's legs across Harry's lap. Cut your hair, show your eye, Katie said, and Harry nodded in agreement. Oliver shook himself. It was time to go find Lee Jordan and the fire whiskey. As he approached the table Lee had requisitioned for his bar, he came into range of another conversation. So I said to Ron, where else was I meant to put Reggie? And he just stammered, SSSSPPIIDDERRI in my YYYB bead. I said he was in a box, but he wasn't having any of it. Completely threw his toys out of his pram. What's a box gonna do? He said. I tried telling him hitting the box with a pillow wasn't going to help, but he wasn't listening. So I summoned the box and left as he was shrieking about it being on his leg. Did you know he has a thing for spiders? Lee asked George. He's never said anything to me or Fred, but Harry mentioned something about acromantulas in Dad's car. I didn't really understand it, though. George replied. Harry's over there, let's ask him, Lee said. No, don't, he's busy with, Oliver said, but Lee did not let him finish and hollered across the common room. Oi, Potter, come over here, will ya? Oliver face-palmed. Harry and Katie got up and separated. Harry ambled over and Katie disappeared up the girls' staircase. You called, Lee. Harry grinned. Yeah mate, what's with you and Katie? George asked and put a heavy hand on Harry's shoulder. I'm not really sure, we kissed a few times and she told me I should get my hair cut. He blushed and rubbed the back of his neck. Amused sniggering followed. Harry, mate, I think you might have got yourself a girlfriend. Did you cover that part yet? Fred didn't bother to mask his snigger. Maybe when the music was playing. I couldn't really tell what she was saying. I just nodded and she jumped on me and kissed me again. Harry's blush deepened. A reluctant grin spread across his face. The 5 boys around him were almost crying with laughter by the time he had finished. Lee just handed him a butterbeer and patted his shoulder. Harry accepted the drink. Was that what you called me over for? He took a long swallow, emptied the bottle, and held it out to Lee with a burp. Can I have another? Yeah, but what's this about an acromantula? Lee handed him a fresh bottle and Harry put it to his lips. I was talking to Ron the other day in your dorm. I put my tarantula box on his bed for a minute and he flipped out. Harry snorted butterbeer out of his nose and descended into a coughing fit, as Katie joined the group. Rescued the bottle from his slackening grip and took a sip. Bloody hell, Harry wheezed. I wondered what had happened. When I walked in, he had stripped his bed and was standing on mine, whacking my trunk with his broom. He descended into a coughing fit again as the group broke into laughter. He better not have damaged it. That's my old broom, I've got good memories with that bunch of twigs. Fred muttered. Harry slapped his chest to clear the obstruction and continued. He's never liked spiders, but last year when we were trying to find the Chamber of Secrets, Hagrid told me to follow the spiders. Ron and I followed them into the Forbidden Forest and found an acromantula colony. They are not small. Your dad's car saved us. He gave a nod to the twins. It had been in the forest since the start of term. Ron's been a bit jumpy ever since. He trailed off and silence greeted him. Everyone stared at him, their jaws hanging open. He reached up and gently closed Katie's mouth. George grabbed Harry's shoulder. Seriously, why did no one tell us? We'd have come with you. Bloody hell, no wonder he freaked out. Think I'll have that fire whiskey now, Lee. A round of agreements echoed his sentiment, and everyone soon held a glass of the amber liquid. I know why Ron didn't mention it. He still has nightmares and won't want you lot picking on him. I suppose it didn't seem that important after. Harry trailed off and gave the twins a meaningful glance. Oh yeah, Ginny, George said, and Harry grimaced and nodded. Oliver glanced between both of them. His eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Did I miss something? What happened to your sister? I can't say, Ollie, sorry. My dad told us not to. Maybe later on, but not now. George looked more serious than Oliver had ever seen him. I think I'll go and have a chat with my little bro. As George left the group, the conversation stalled. Lee found a new one. So Katie, he grinned. Do you have a boyfriend? Young Harry here said he's not entirely sure. Quidditch. Minerva McGonagall removed 15 silencing charms from the fat lady's portrait, the floor, the ceiling, the walls on either side of the portrait, and, once opened, the back of the portrait, and the tunnel to the common room. She nodded, impressed. That had been good work by the Weasley twins, their magical signatures were hard to miss. Of course she would never tell them, she knew better than to encourage those two hellions. She took a breath and steeled herself for a trashed common room before she ventured further into the common room and looked around. Not one cushion was damaged, that was a pleasant surprise. The only thing out of place was a misshapen lump of arms and legs on the sofa that faced the fireplace. She cleared her throat. Mr. Potter. Miss Bell, are you awake? She received an incoherent mumble in response. She pulled out her wand and took aim. The two teens gasped, tried to free themselves from the tangled blanket. And one of them tumbled to the ground in a heap. An audible thud followed as a body collided with the wooden floorboards. The pile of blankets, now on the floor, groaned pitifully. I understand that my Aguamenti charm is particularly cold, possibly the result of my upbringing in the Highlands. She emphasized her Scottish burr to prove her point. Too bad that her irony probably was lost on her two lions. Nope, I'm awake. Harry sat up on the sofa, tousled and wide-eyed. He blinked up at her like an owlet in broad daylight. Why are you in my bedroom, Professor? The blanket on the floor moved aside to reveal an equally tousled Katie Bell. Both teens were fully clothed, much to Minerva's intense relief. That wasn't always the case when she had to rouse young couples in the common room. However, some words of warning were in order, although she detested these conversations. A good night, I take it. She looked from one to the other. Our congratulations in order. A grand night, Professor. Katie answered for Harry as she sat up. We are. She glanced at Harry, seeing where things go. Harry blushed. Well, as long as things remain fully clothed, you may continue. Minerva McGonagall sniffed imperiously. Both teenagers blushed this time. It was one of life's little pleasures when she could trap her charges in a double entendre. Quidditch. A low mew. RMUR filled the Great Hall during breakfast. There were so few Gryffindors present that the house elves had only set places for a dozen people. The day following a Gryffindor party was always slow. RRY stared down at the untouched single slice of buttered toast, then up at the only Weasley sibling who had never missed a meal. The sight of Ron gobbling down his breakfast made his stomach lurch. Harry averted his eyes, reached past the plate to pick up his glass of water, and sipped slowly. Hermione Granger chuckled next to him and added more baked beans to her plate. Feeling rough, he turned, a baleful glare up at his supposed friend, and she smirked at him. So, Harry, Katie Bell. The innocent question came with another wink, and Ron actually stopped mid-chew and focused on Harry with an unholy gleam in his eye. There were days he wondered why he was friends with these two. George told me about the reward for catching the snitch. Hermione smirked. It wasn't for catching the snitch. It was for getting her out of the shitty weather, Harry said calmly and took another sip. Ron snorted and almost choked on the food he had forgotten to swallow. He forced it down, opened his UTH to speak, then gave up as he collapsed into a coughing fit. They watched him struggle to regain control. Hermione shrugged and turned back to interrogate Harry again. And what happened after the reward? She said with a strange emphasis on reward. Why did you say reward in such a weird way there, my own? Harry asked innocently. She hated being called my own, so both he and Ron dusted it off at times like these. When they wanted to get up her nose. She froze. Clearly, you know more than I want you to. Harry sighed. He wrapped an arm around her waist and slid her along the bench until she was tucked into his side. She relaxed into the hug and rested her head against his shoulder. I know, he whispered into her ear. Hermione sniffed twice, then removed herself from his touch and turned back to her meal. Ron had finally emptied his mouth and rebooted his brain. What are you two on about? Is this a reward anyone can have? Harry and Hermione exchanged a glance and burst into laughter. The tips of Ron's ears turned red. "Why are you laughing?" When he got only more laughter in response, he huffed. "You're both weird. I'm going to sit with Ginny." Ron sent an annoyed glare at his two friends who were still laughing at him, collected his plate, and stomped off towards the second years seated near the middle of the table. Harry and Hermione watched the oblivious Storm Cl. Sit next to his sister and glanced at each other. The giggling started again. "Oh, I do love Ron," Hermione said. "I'm happy for you, Harry, a proper relationship, get you. I don't know what this is yet, it all happened really quickly. But Katie is so certain. We talked this morning after McGonagall woke us up and—" "What?" Hermione's shout interrupted him, and she stared at him horrified. "No, it's not what you think." Heads turned towards them at his shout. "We were talking last night and she fell asleep. Then I did. We woke up this morning on the sofa, no idea where the blanket came from. Katie fell off the sofa when McGonagall threatened to Augmentius and I asked her why she was in my bedroom." Hermione giggled again. "You did what?" "Oh, I wish I could have seen her face." "No, you don't." Harry shuddered. "I couldn't stop blushing. Katie told her we were seeing where things go, and McGonagall said at least our things were fully clothed. I thought I was going to die." Hermione belly laughed and fell off the bench. She sat up as Fred and George stopped next to her head and looked down. "Did you break another witch, Potter?" one Weasley twin asked. They offered Hermione a hand each. Harry turned his head, mouth full of toast, and gestured to the table next to him as he chewed. The Weasley twins sat and as one, stuck forks into sausage and bacon respectively and proceeded to load up their plates. "Hermione?" the other twin asked. "Oh, not again." Hermione covered her face and grinned. Harry cleared his throat. "I was telling her how McGonagall found me and Katie this morning." "Quidditch." Ron, "Look. A spider." Shriek. "Fred, will you stop that? I jump every time he yells," Alicia told him. "I know, a twofer." George grinned. "Who told you?" "I've kept it a secret for ages." Ron demanded as red tinged his ears. "Quidditch." Oliver stood with his classmates next to the 7th-year herbology greenhouse. His parents still weren't happy he had chosen the herbology N.E.W.T. and had told him horror stories of close calls, injuries and painful deaths, and the ridiculously high death rate. He had still enrolled, and so far no one had died. The worst that had happened was Percy getting a shiny burn scar on his left forearm when he pruned a devil's snare. Oliver huffed out a laugh. Percy had flinched as the plant moved and had burnt himself. He still hadn't lived it down 3 years later. Needless to say, Percy hadn't taken the herbology newt. A book sailed through the air, bounced off Oliver's back, and thumped onto the ground. "What sort of keeper are you that you can't even catch a book, Wood?" Flint's harsh voice growled at him. Oliver turned and raised an eyebrow. Marcus Flint, a tall, well-built young man with misaligned teeth and shifty eyes, advanced on him. "I'm really impressed you hit what you were aiming at, Flint." "Or was your aim just bad and you were going for the head?" Oliver replied evenly. Flint sneered again. "Do you really think you'll get enough points to beat us to the trophy? How will your mudblood bitches keep up with us, now we are even better on our nimbuses?" He narrowed his eyes and stared Flint down and ground his teeth. Flint smirked viciously. "Cat got your tongue. We've got some special plays lined up for them. They won't know what hit 'em. We'll let the bludgers pound on them. They'll be crawling back on their hand and knees by the time Malfoy catches the snitch from under Potter's stupid nose." Stifled sniggers from the Slytherins who surrounded him, egging him on. Oliver's fists clenched into tight balls. "Why, I bet they'll even beg." Flint's jaw kept wagging for a few more seconds, but no sound came out. A voice thundered behind the Slytherin students, spun around and collectively blanched. "I think you've said quite enough, Mr. Flint. I will not stand for such abusive language in this school. That will be 50 points from Slytherin and a week of detention with me and a week with Mr. Filch." Professor Sprout was furious. She flicked her wand and Flint flinched, but all that happened was 2 paper aeroplanes emerging from her wand tip and zooming away. Next to her stood Professor Vector, who glowered at the 7th year. "Septima, would you mind escorting Mr. Flint to the headmaster's office? After the last time, he expressed a wish to have a discussion with the young man, and I have this lot to teach." Professor Sprout asked her colleague. "I was only collecting some mint cuttings for my tea, Pomona. I will get some later. Come, Flint. We will probably meet Professor Snape on the way up. I will bring some to the staff room after lunch." Professor Sprout nodded a thanks to her colleague and turned her attention to the gathered students. "In you go then. There's no need to look so smug, Mr. Wood. I know exactly what you would have been doing if I hadn't been here." "I don't know what you mean, Professor," Oliver smirked back at her. He waited until Professor Sprout had walked past him. hid Flint's book under the bush next to him, and followed her inside. Quidditch. Would. Where's my book? Flint snarled. What book would that be, Flint? Oliver asked mildly. It had been a little over a week since he had seen Marcus Flint. The Flint-free week had been bliss during his suspension. That was a library book you've lost, Pants will skin you alive for that. Flint said maliciously. How did I lose it? It's your book. Where did you last see it? Oliver asked helpfully. Outside the herbology greenhouse, where you didn't catch it. Flint sneered. Well, did you look there? It's been over a week in Scottish weather. I don't fancy your chances with Pants. I heard the last person who damaged a book was banned for life. Flint snarled and stomped off. Oliver pulled a shrunken item from his pocket and stared at it. What's that, Ollie? Claire Frobisher asked him. This. Oh, it's Flint's book. I am looking after it for him, all he has to do is ask for it back. Oliver deadpanned. Snickering greeted him. Quidditch. Davies, Oliver called, can I have a word? The empty stone corridor echoed with the footsteps of the two boys. Oliver was lucky he had found Davies alone, he had been trying for days. Roger Davies paused in his purposeful stride and looked over his shoulder. Hi Wood, how can I help you? Davies was quieter than most captains Oliver dealt with. He prepared more than he practiced. Read the game rather than bulldozing through it. The banter and easy conversation was not there with Roger Davies. However, he was still a good man if only an average Quidditch captain. Did you hear what happened the other week, with Flint? Oliver managed to restrain his smirk to a twitch of his lips. I did. A week's suspension for repeat offenses and 2 weeks of detention. Wow, I think it was the complete lack of remorse. I hear Snape has already asked for the game to be postponed. Are you going to agree? Oliver asked. The Hogwarts Quidditch Captain's Charter that every captain had to sign before their first game in charge states amongst other things, if a game is to be postponed both captains have to agree and they cannot be pressured to a decision. The Choic, must be made with the good of the game in mind. My hell, he brought that onto himself. It's not my job to make it easier on Slytherin. Davies snorted. Snape will make your life difficult. Oliver said. Like I care. I didn't get an O so I won't be seeing him in class anyway. Davies replied. What do you need? Oliver handed across some rolled-up parchment. Beat him like a drum, he said and turned to walk away. Are these your plays? Davies asked, shock clear in his voice. No Raj, they're your plays, Oliver replied. He did not stop or turn around. It's Roger not Raj, Davies muttered. Oliver grinned. Quidditch. Angelina huffed, puffed and sweated. The weather was not pleasant and she was not enjoying herself. Ollie, she said in a deceptively calm voice. 3 male heads per. Get up from their defeated posture like meerkats. Yes Angie, Oliver replied, still staring at his trainers trying to slow his breathing. How many more are you going to have us run? The strain in her voice was a clear indication she kept her temper under tight control. Oh, I don't know, probably 5 more. Why? He asked, sitting down with a groan and stretched his back out. You do realize that Quidditch is a flying sport, don't you? Angelina's voice rose slightly as she said flying. You can't get proper conditioning from flying alone, you know that, Angie. He had looked up by now and the rest of the team were on their feet. You're not seeming to understand my drift here, Oliver. We've run up this bloody hill 21 times. 21 times. I don't care how much of an obsess. I've compulsive you are in like large round numbers. If you say we have to do this one more time, I will chuck you into the lake. Oliver pulled a face and his self-preservation instincts finally kicked in. Angelina had been grouchy for the last few days. Was it her time of the month? Oh, look at the time. I think we will have some beater drills and the chasers can hit the showers. R's eyes only widened slightly as he waited for Angelina's verdict of his decision. She simply huffed and set off at a brisk walk toward the distant Quidditch pitch and associated showers. He could hear the other 2 girls stifle giggles. 4 teenagers watched the 3 witches walk away, and a Weasley twin turned to his captain. Very brave there, Ollie. George commented. Did you think I should have told her we have 9 more to do? Oliver asked him incredulously. No, but I would have paid good money to see her try and kick you into the lake, George replied. The group chuckled and the Umauer lifted their spirits enough to get them moving. Where are you 3 going? Oliver asked. The Quidditch pitch. We've got beater practice, and Harry can practice dodging them, Fred said, confused. What? Harry squawked. Oh no boys, it's not your time of the month. Oliver grinned maliciously, we've got 9 more hill runs to do. Dodging bludgers comes after. Oliver laughed at the groans which answered him. Quidditch. The day started innocently enough. A delayed first-year class Professor Sprout had kept back had caused a congestion of students outside the row of greenhouses. Is it cold and damp under the lake? We're badgers, we're meant to live underground. Anyway, we can get snacks wherever we walk right past the kitchen portrait. Ah, he's got a point there. Do you get a nosebleed being so high up in your ivory tower like a murder of crows? Oh, that's very clever. You live in a tower too, don't you? Do you know the name for a group of Gryffindors? A stupid of Gryffindors. That's not a real thing. We're a bravery of lions. It's not much better than a herd of stupid duffers, mudblood lovers, the lot of you. Who invited you, Warrington? No one wants a slimy snake. Snakes aren't slimy. Densagio. Quote. Arg, what have you done? Oi, that's my mate. Calvorio. Spells flew left and right. A cacophony of colors lit up every face and reflected off the glass panels of the greenhouses. First year's out of the way. Move. Accio. 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 Some responsible souls summoned the first and second years as a battle erupted in between the greenhouses. Professor Sprout, drawn by the noise and light of magical combat, hurried out of greenhouse number 4. Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus. Enough. Don't any of you have the sense God gave to a gnome? You don't fling spells around a magical greenhouse. What were you all thinking? Detention, and all of you will be explaining yourselves to Professor McGonagall this afternoon. Now get to your next class. She flicked her wand and sent a paper airplane zooming to the nearest open window in the castle. Bloody Gryffindors. Bloody Slytherins. Bloody children. Why didn't I open my shop? Oh yes, I remember. Bloody Dumbledore. This was it. Today was the day. The one he had been waiting for. Ravenclaw versus Slytherin, the next matchup and prime scouting territory. All the stands were full. It was a lovely clear day, if a bit blustery. But he had his Quidditch scarf and hat on and a warming charm on his hands. A leather-bound notebook, Muggle style, rested on his lap, charmed so only he could see it. The expensive Uggle pen his father had bought him for this very reason rested in the centerfold. Madam Hooch stood over the Quidditch storage box and glanced around to check everything was in place. Professor Snape had chosen the Slytherin prefect Edmund Spears as commentator. Oliver assumed the fact that the Slytherin 6th year was a prefect might make him commentate responsibly. Or maybe pigs might fly. None of the commentators acted responsibly. It was in the job description and the reason why a professor was in the box with them. The Ravenclaw choice would cause friction. Had Professor Flitwick done it for that very reason? Oliver chuckled to himself. He wouldn't put it past Flitwick. Quidditch was everything, and every edge helped. Marcus Turner, a 5th-year prefect, was a Muggle born. Oliver knew Marcus fairly well. He lived in Ottery Street. Catchpole and Oliver had knocked about with him and the Weasleys. There hadn't been that many children in such a small village. But Marcus did know his Quidditch. And here come the teams. Turner began, first, Ravenclaw. Page, Ingleby, Samuels, Captain Davies, Burrow, and Chong. The green blur mounted on the top of the line Nimbus 2001's as the Slytherin team. Spears drawled. He made it sound like he was excited and didn't want to be there at the same time. It was a special skill. Bletchley, Derek, Bowl, Flint, who is once again captain, Montague, Warrington, and Draco Malfoy. Oliver grudgingly admitted that Spears at least knew the Slytherin players' names. The two teams streaked around the stadium in opposite directions. When they passed above the Gryffindor stand, Oliver could hear the clatter of wood on flesh, followed by a yell. Looks like the Dirty Tricks Brigade has started early today, George said from the seat over. He leaned forward to look across Alicia and give Oliver a serious look. We're better off flying higher or wider when we cross. The whole team nodded in agreement. Bunch of trolls, N. Galena muttered from the other side of George, his arm across her shoulders. Waste of perfectly good racing brooms there. Oliver knew she was still bitter about some of the fouls the Slytherin team got away with in their behavior off the pitch. Hooch was good, but she needed eyes in the back of her head to see everything that went on. They'll get theirs, Angie. They are big buggers, but a poo on a broom is a quick poo and it doesn't mean it can play Quidditch, Fred said philosophically. The entire team turned to stare at Fred, who looked as innocent as the day he had been born. He sat in the row in front and half turned to speak to them. What? He asked straight-faced. I think what my mentally challenged brother means is that we are a better team, are well-drilled and are fitter to end those fat lumps of lard on racing brooms. Let's see how well they keep up with us after hour 3, George translated his brother's words. Isn't that what I said? Fred asked, confused. I think we'll use the spatchcock defense when we play them, Oliver decided. We need something more aggressive than Catchpole to combat their speed, no matter how poo-like they are. He shook his head to try and clear the imagery. He made a note, then directed his attention towards Madam Hooch, who was in the process of reading the Slytherins' The Riot Act. I have never seen such careless flying in my whole career. I have a good mind to ban you outright for the entire season, Mr. Derek. If you have caused more damage than a contusion, you will be. Miss Chong, go see Madame Pomfrey now, please. We shall wait. Madame Hooch was furious. I suggest you have a word with your team, Mr. Flint. I don't care that you haven't been here. Any more of this will lead to point deduction for every offense. And if it endangers a player's life and I judge it to be malicious, it will be game forfeiture. Take your team over to your posts and impress the seriousness of the situation. Madame Hooch instructed the Ravenclaw players to wait in position and descended to converse with Professor Snape, who glowered from his position in the commentary box. He does look like an overly large bat, doesn't he? Caw. Ty observed from her position under Harry's arm. She had tugged his hand as far around as it would reach and interlaced her fingers with his. The comment came during a lull in the gusting wind and the entire stand heard it. Snape's head whipped around to see who had said it, but all he could see was a wall of poker-straight faces. Snape twisted in his seat fully and glared suspiciously at the stud. Ents in general and the Gryffindor team in particular for an additional second, then turned back to an irate Madame Hooch. The team fell into muffled sniggers and only regained control when Chong rejoined her team. Heed my warning, Flint. If you cannot control your team, I will seriously consider Hogwarts bans. Madame Hooch glowered at him. I have the backing of your head of house in this. As one, the Slytherin team turned to look at the potions master, then back at the referee again. Clear, Madam, Flint said. You are well, Miss Chong. Madame Hooch addressed the Ravenclaw seeker. Yes ma'am, Chong replied. A bruise only. Very well. Madame Hooch descended to the pitch and opened the chest. First the snitch was released, then the bludgers, and finally she picked up the quaffle and regained altitude. With a final baleful glare at Marcus Flint, she flung the quaffle high into the air and the game was on. The quaffle toss has been won by Slytherin. Turner began. He had been a split second before Spears. Turner must have felt the heat of Spears' glare that was turned his way. Montague, with some fancy broom work there to avoid both bludgers and a claw chaser's blatant attempt at blatching. Spears interrupted Turner. Pass to Warrington, another bludger aimed at Montague. Warrington is away. Pass to Flint. He's being shepherded towards the stand by Davies and Stretton. That's surely a foul. Ref. Mr. Spears. Professor Snape drawled, as much as I might agree that there is some suspect play, it is not your place to call fouls. The two Ravenclaw chasers had sandwiched Flint between their bodies, and as he tried to pass to Warrington, Davies plucked the quaffle out of his hand. Both Ravenclaw chasers leant backwards hard and flicked their brooms over in a loop and descended rapidly. The quaffle being passed to Stretton, who streaked across the field while Davies attacked the goal area but pulled out. Flint is dispossessed by Davies and is not happy about it. And no, that was not blatching, Spears. Davies attacks the goal area, no, it's a feint. Stretton to Burrow, to Stretton. Bletchley has positioned himself to defend against Davies. He's backtracking, but E's had to swerve as a bludger almost takes his head off. The left-hand hoop is unprotected. Burrow shoots, he scores. 10-0 to Ravenclaw. Turner leapt to his feet with both arms in the air like he had won a race. Oliver looked straight ahead as the stares of his chaser teammates burned into the side of his head. A finger poked into his side caused him to flinch. Ollie, you didn't, Alicia asked. Didn't what, Allie? He turned to her, innocence written on his soul. Did you give our plays to the claws? Angelina grated out. I really want him to beat Flint like a drum, Oliver sighed. I gave them 5. Pork. He gestured at the ongoing match. Gentle, Calamity, Fame and Carl. But why Ollie? Fred asked. Let them win their own game. 2 reasons Fred, Oliver told him. The R. Eason Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff don't win more matches is their lack of imagination with tactics and plays. Flint is an ass, but he's clever. Davies is an average playmaker. Second place in the Champy. Onship will come down to us and Slytherin again, and the more the claws score today, the better for us. I might do it for the Snake, Puff game too. Fred looked mollified, but Angelina didn't. Does that mean we can't use those plays? Ollie, we've been practicing bloody hard. Course not, Angie. It's the same as everyone uses the Hawkhead, knowing what it is doesn't mean you can defend against it. Plus, if they're expecting pork when 2 of you sandwich Flint like that, but we do pork bacon. Ah, the 3 chasers chorused. I'm hungry now, Harry complained. Is that cellar coming back soon? Quote. Calm down, Turner. It's going to be a long match. Spears chided him. Chong is diving. Malfoy. Malfoy wasn't even looking. Useless. Now he sees it, but he's far too late. He's driving hard after her. Feint. She pulls out and he does too, but only barely. Spears raged apoplectic. Samuels pinged a bludger in Malfoy's direction just as Chong started her dive. Turner struggled to keep the humor out of his voice. Clearly a planned move. Davies has the quaffle. Burrow and Stretton join him in a hawkhead, and Stretton peels off in a classic chaser move, drawing a bludger in Montague, but Davies still has it. They parted around Flint. Pass to Burrow. Was that an attempt at blatching? Ollie, what else did you give him? George asked. Not that, but we used it last year, and it's not that odd that other teams would copy it. Oliver defended himself. And the puffs. Are you going to give Diggory some? Katie asked. I'll have a chat with him, but plays aren't his problem. Oliver said. His chasers aren't good enough, he'll need to replace his whole lineup to challenge us. Angelina said quietly. Oliver nodded in agreement. Ooh. The crowd winced in sympathy as Burrow was slammed by a bludger. Madam Hooch blew her whistle. I've warned you, Mr. Bull. Have a care where you hit your bludgers, or you'll be off. Quidditch. From the corner of his eye Oliver could see Katie help herself to Harry's recently acquired hot dog, and he smirked. It was nice to see. Harry's confidence had grown leaps and bounds just by the close proximity of his girlfriend. Now they had even started to bicker. Oi, that's mine. I asked if you wanted one and you said you weren't hungry, Harry said in a plaintive tone. Wasn't then, I am now, Katie replied reasonably. That was 10 minutes ago. Next to Oliver. Alicia giggled silently. What's your point? Katie asked her boyfriend, as she tore off the bottom third of his diminished snack. Harry doesn't share food, Harry said, with pain in his voice at the theft. When did you change your name to Ron? She asked. Oi, Ron said through his own mouthful of hot dog on Harry's other side. Angelina joined in Alicia's laughter. Oliver just shook his head. Have some of his hot dog then, came Harry's childish reply. The only one who might get any of his food is Hermione, Katie said with an impish smirk. No, she isn't, said Hermione from beyond Ron, looking up from her book. I like my fingers where they are, thank you very much, she continued primly. The howl of laughter brought the attention of the Quidditch commentators. Well, the Griffs found that funny. I can understand why Malfoy eating dirt is humorous, but that was over the top, Turner commented. Anyway, the score after an hour and a half of play is Ravenclaw 130 to Slytherin 50. These claws are defending like lions. And Madam Hooch's warning has pulled the slimy SNA. Finish that sentence, Mr. Turner, and you two shall soon be flying. Professor Snape interceded. Oh, thank you, Professor, Turner replied beaming. But I don't have my broom with me. I know you don't, the professor continued silkily. Nevertheless, an S. Slytherin has the quaffle with Flint on a one-on-one with Paige. Score. Paige guessed wrong and Flint slots it into the middle hoop. Turner continued, but his voice was shaken. 6 heads rotated to stare at the Quidditch captain. Nobody likes to lose against the Snakes. They're playing well, he said to no one in particular. What did you do, Ollie? Angelina asked. I might have mentioned that the Claws had a worse defense than most of the school ghosts apart from Moaning Myrtle. That they should change it up during the game. He replied, still not looking at his chaser. Look, I have still predicted every play and counterplay both teams have made. I know Flint inside and out and Davies has stuck to my suggestions in the order I wrote them down. Relax. If we lose to them, Oliver would. Angelina let her sentence hang in the air. The threat was obvious. He replied with a beatific smile. She huffed, it doesn't suit you. How many plays do I have, Angie? Oliver asked and turned to face her. I dunno, 30, she replied. 52, variation on variation. We've only run through half that in the last 2 years. We have 10 plays off Seeker alone. I gave them 5, and UCA. N guarantee Davies thinks he has me worked out. We need them to beat Slytherin or have a very small point margin. Have a little faith, Angie. Quidditch. Snitch. Harry pointed his free arm toward the Slytherin posts. Away from the quaffle action. Where? 3 voices demanded while their eyes tried to follow his arm. Left-hand post, inside a tuft of grass at the base, Harry stated matter-of-factly. Bloody hell, Harry. How did you see that? George asked awed. The wind caught it and I saw the wingtip flutter. Harry smirked. Oliver could tell he knew how awesome his observation sounded and he was pleased with himself. 6 heads turned to stare at Harry, then back at the posts. 6 bodies leaned forward and 6 pairs of eyes squinted. I don't see anything, Alicia muttered. 70 meters away and the boy spotted a wing flutter. Holy Merlin. I'm glad you're on our side, Harry, Fred said. Quidditch. Draco Malfoy has caught the snitch. Chong was maliciously impeded by Flint, Bull and one of the bludgers. Combine that with the hit she took half an hour ago that has slowed her down enough to allow Malfoy to win it for Slytherin. Ravenclaw 230 to Slytherin 250. So close. A defeated Turner ended the game commentary to the background of Spears hollering himself hoarse. How many times did you see it, Harry? Katie asked her boyfriend. Dunno, 10, I think. I thought Cho was better than that. That clatter with Derek an hour ago must have hurt her. She was off her game after that, Harry replied. Quidditch incident, unfortunately, Oliver told him. Derek was watching the bludger heading his way and didn't see her. She was the one who flew into him. Anyway, Angie, George said as they reached the bottom of the bleacher steps. Can I have the first dance, my lady? Quote, are we having a party? She asked in surprise. I thought McGonagall put her foot down after the fight outside the greenhouses last week. We didn't ask her, did we, Fred? George said to his brother. No, asking her was Harry's job and we didn't bother telling him, Fred assured his twin. Me? Harry asked. Why me? You're her favorite, everyone knows it, Harry, Alicia told him. If we want a yes from MCG, then you're the one to send. She smirked. Really? All those times? I had no idea. You can do it yourself from now on. Harry replied in an annoyed tone. Harry, think of the bigger picture. Fred slid his arm across his shoulders, pushing Katie out of the way. Hey, she exclaimed. How often do you get to dance and kiss your girlfriend? He tried the big brother knows best approach. Most days. If you need me to ask, just tell me why. Don't try and trick me or I'll tell her who's actually asking, Harry threatened. You wouldn't. George gasped horrified. Try me. Carrot Top. Quidditch. Sunday morning began bright and early for Rolanda Hooch. As was their long-standing habit, Minerva had accompanied her down to the pitch before any student had left their toasty warm beds to do a safety check on the Quidditch pitch before the skills workshop and mini-matches. She would perform a flyby on the hoops, a containment check on the bludgers in their cases, and inspect the locker rooms. The locker room check had two aims. One for tidiness and cleanliness, which was usually redundant due to the house elves, and second, an illicit activity check, which was the official reason that Minerva accompanied her. Who's your bet for the student most caught in broom closets this year, Minnie? Rolanda asked. McLaggen, I think. He was a close second behind Jones of Ravenclaw last year. I've had him in my office twice already for being too familiar. McGonagall replied, the complaining tone in her voice the closest Rolanda had ever heard to a whinge. The main reason the two were leisurely strolling down the grassy path by the Black Lake with a broomstick over her shoulder was simple. It was relaxing and well away from any noisy child. My brother is coming up from Wales next weekend. He was wondering if you'd like to join us for dinner at that little Italian in Fraserburgh on Saturday night. Can you ask Septima to wrangle your lions? Oh, I haven't seen Bertie in ages. It would be lovely to see him again. I'm sure I can convince Albus and Septima to stay in the castle. Yes, it would be a pleasure. Their conversation meandered on and lasted until they were at the edge of the trimmed verdant grass of the Quidditch pitch, not a blade out of place. Those two young elves you assigned have done a marvelous job around here. It's immaculate. Rolanda commented as she glanced around, yellow eyes darting. I'm glad, Rolanda, Miffy did recommend them highly. Locker rooms first, then the Quidditch chest. Minerva replied satisfied. Why don't you head that way and I'll check the rings. Rolanda put action to words and kicked off and soared into an unprofessorial loop-de-loop. Oh, do grow up, Rolanda, scolded Minerva. In the few minutes she spent in careful inspection, Minerva had reached the first locker room and disappeared inside. Rolanda descended in a smooth glide and dismounted in the doorway. She had to stop walking as Minerva had halted on the threshold and was gazing at the mess inside. What on earth, she began but cut herself off. Who was here yesterday? You don't know. I thought there was a schedule and you held to it religiously. Minerva questioned. There isn't, I do. It's blank for all of yesterday. Rolanda paused and scratched her head. Pilly. Punky. She called. Two pops sounded, as a pair of young floppy-eared elves appeared in front of them. How's can we be helping Rolly Hoochie this morning? The elf on the right said. Minerva opened her mouth and closed it again and Rolanda gave her a suspicious stare. When was the last time you cleaned here, Punky? She asked instead. Wednesday, as Miffy told us to. We've been up in the owl home since, Punky replied. She had been looking around like her fellow elf was and gasped. Pilly is very sorry too, Rolly Hoochie. We're not blaming you, Punky, either of you. Thursday night was Slytherin reserve tryouts. Rolanda assured the elf. They left it late this year. It seems someone was not at all happy at the team selection. Minerva added. Honestly, Minerva, it's like herding cats. Rolanda told her longtime friend. You're not funny, Rolanda. Minerva said and scowled at her colleague, who chuckled away merrily. You two put this place to rights and I'll go see Severus. Goodbye, Minnie, I'll tell Bertie to book for 3. Rolanda said. Yes, please do Rolly. Minerva huffed. I'll make an announcement in the morning and tell the captains this is their one and only warning. Herding cats. She muttered the last two words and stalked off. Rolanda moved to check the chest and giggled. Minnie was sensitive about her alter ego. Quidditch. Oliver arrived at the Quidditch pitch just as the airborne students descended. It looked like the Quidditch workshop had just finished and the real fun was about to begin. Pick up game number 1, Madam Hooch paused to drink from a hip flask and consulted a notebook. Anita Snoots against Slyther right in. Childish sniggers caused her to pause. I'm just going to ignore that. She continued, let's keep it a good clean game, you've only got 30 minutes so make the most of it. I don't want to be calling for blatching at all today. I'm looking at you, right, I called 6 last Sunday just in your game. Oliver listened to the lecture with half an ear as he sidled over to Anita and lowered his head. Who did you get to replace Sloper and McLaggen? He whispered. Anita harumphed and turned her head slightly. I can't believe those idiots forgot 3 assignments. And the detentions they had with Filch. There wasn't much choice at such short notice. Anita trailed off. Well, who did you get? Oliver's voice rose in exasperation. Anita just smirked and nodded towards the Quidditch locker rooms. Harry and Katie sat on the bench between the 2 locker room doors tucked back under the shade of the slanted roof. They waved as he looked over and returned to their conversation, fingers intertwined. When did you get those 2? Are the twins going to climb out of the chimney? Oliver asked amused. A little bit of gamesmanship, right, really annoyed me this weekend. I saw an opportunity to stick one on that slimy snake. Sloper told me at breakfast this morning. Bloody McLaggen was watching by the doors. The ringers were sitting next to me and I asked if they were busy. They said no at the same time. That's creepy by the way, far too like the twins, and said they would meet us here. Anita smugly told him. So who are the beaters? You want Harry to try. I'm not sure he's held a bat in his life. Oliver said and smirked towards Right. Actually I was thinking you and me, Ollie, let Katie lead the chasers with Harry and Kenny Toller and Jenny Turner as the seeker. Ron Weasley is the keeper. I've not met Jenny yet. Oliver said. She's been in the workshops with me this year, good enough for seeker. Anita told him. Ask Harry to give her a few pointers, he won't mind. So she's a 4th chaser. Yes, Anita was interrupted by Madam Hooch. When you 2 are quite finished, where is the rest of your team, Miss Macduff? Madam Hooch had an amused twinkle in her eye. We're all here madam, my chasers are just in the locker room. Anita replied innocently. Scared are they? You'll need more than wood to beat the team I've put together. Thomas Wright bragged. He opened his mouth to start again when he glanced at the locker room for the first time and saw Harry and Katie. His eyes grew wide and he visibly gulped. My team Madam Hooch, Ron Weasley as keeper. Myself and Oliver Wood as beaters, my chasers are Katie Bell, Kenny Toller and Harry Potter and the seeker is Jenny Turner. Harry and Katie had joined the teams in the CENTRE by now and they were eyeballing their opposite player. Jenny Turner didn't have a very high intimidation factor but she did try. Very good Miss Macduff. Madam Hooch could barely keep a straight face and took off before the players. What? You've got ringers in your team. You can't do that. Wright complained. You can bring any player you want who's a current student, you can even pick a Gree. If you could convince Harry to play in green. Good luck. Anita offered sweetly and took off after the referee. Anita Snoots rose after their captain and gathered around her in a huddle. Right. Mob is shaken with the late addition of our ringers, she began. Anita nodded towards Harry and Katie floating side by side. As Katie is our professional she is leading the chasers. Take your cues from her Kenny. Stay alert Ron and don't drift off. Wright's a knob but he can play so there will be chances to show off. Harry, do you have any advice for Jenny? Ollie, Katie. Harry cleared his throat and looked Jenny over. You're half the size of Farrell but on a similar broom, so you'll be faster in a head-to-head, wind resistance will count here. Don't forget the bludgers and be aware of dirty tricks. Harry advised. Kenny, I won't be calling plays unless it's a specific one that Harry or Ollie will be a part of, there's too much to know. Always think to be in position to receive a pass and push your broom if an attack is on. Defend like your life depends on it. Don't forget about the bludgers and don't forget that any Slytherin is born to cheat. Katie added. Oliver took a breath and glanced around at the team around him. Not his team but still dressed in red. Look out for each other, this is your family even for only half an hour. Think about how much pleasure Nita will have laughing in Wright's face. Oliver finished. The team grinned and all looked towards Anita. Let's have some fun. They broke apart and drifted over to Madam Hooch and took their positions arrayed opposite the Slytherin team. The bludgers gently circled the pitch awaiting the spell from Madam Hooch to send them on their first collision course. The quaffle was tossed high into the air and Katie shot. Through the space the Quaffle occupied as quick as a flash, then descended rapidly to avoid a clumsy challenge from Theodore Knott, Quaffle tucked securely in the crook of her arm. What did I just say, Knott? Not even a minute into the game. Madame Hooch called from the spot she had thrown the Quaffle from. Katie swooped towards the Slytherin hoops and shied the Quaffle in front of a spooked right into Kenny's waiting hand. He fumbled it once, twice, then pinned it against his chest and pushed his clean sweep faster. Kenny's sloppier pass was intercepted by Braithwaite, who had the Quaffle belted out his hand courtesy of a well-aimed bludger from Anita. Yes. Go on, Newts. The distance chants of Ron could be heard over the gusts of wind. Oliver had his head on a swivel using his hard-trained Warrenus skills to keep track of both bludgers and the other 11 players. He analyzed the play that blossomed before him, took careful aim and swung. The bludger clipped Wright's broom, sending him into a flat spin which gave Harry a split second to make his shot. A seasoned chaser would have sunk it in their sleep, but Harry's attempt bounced off the rim. Katie collected the rebound and looped a shot at the far side hoop. Newts 10 to Slyther 0. Madame Hooch called. Quidditch. Newts 70 to Slyther 40. Madame Hooch shouted. 5 minutes left. What's that? A panicked yell rose from the bleachers, followed by a scream. Madame Hooch reacted quickly and disabled the bludgers and descended towards the noise. Oliver twisted on his broom to see and clenched his left hand, which had become suddenly cold. His teeth began to chatter and he looked around. All the players had begun to drift and everyone had become very pale. Oliver looked up towards Jenny and was shocked to see she had begun to sway on her broom. He could faintly hear shouting and he felt uncharacteristically panicked and twitchy. Oliver gave his head a shake and drifted up to see if she was all right. Hi Jenny, Oliver said through chattering teeth. You okay? No Ollie, my tummy hurts. Jenny said softly and pitched alarmingly to the side. Luckily it was towards Oliver, who managed to gather her to his Eston look around in alarm for the other students. Jenny's broom carried on its lazy path unguided. Katie and Harry were side by side heading down and all the other broom riders were below them. Bell. Ow, at pitch level 3 hooded figures seemed to absorb the light around them. The lower he got the worse Oliver began to feel. He gritted his teeth and squeezed his free hand around the shaft of his broom. Oliver glanced down at Jenny and was dismayed to see that she had gone limp and her eyes were closed. Come on Jenny, wake up, you need to open your… Oliver was interrupted by a heart-rending scream. Katie was laid flat on her broom, both hands clasping Harry's arm. He was hanging limp and lifeless 20 meters above the ground, his broom nowhere to be seen. Oliver's rapid breathing spiked and he glanced down at Jenny again. There was nothing he could do. 2 red-robed broom riders hurried to Harry's side and managed to take his weight just as Katie lost her grip. Kenny pulled Harry onto his broom bridle style and held onto his robes in a death grip. Oliver breathed out and realized he had been holding it. My God, he cursed, why am I so cold? McGonagall ran onto the pitch in a rage, swiftly followed by the headmaster, several Aurors and Minister Fudge. Oliver managed to descend to ground level and adjusted his hold on Jenny, broom discarded on the floor for a more important burden. Animals of light zoomed about the pitch and Oliver was approached by Professor McGonagall, who conjured a stretcher as she jogged up to him. McGonagall reached out and felt Jenny's head and pulse before saying anything. She didn't fall. Oliver. Place her on the stretcher please. She asked, relief shone on her face at his head shake. No, Professor, I noticed she was swaying on her broom. And managed to reach her when she passed out. I think Harry's in a similar boat. Oliver replied somberly. Bless you Oliver, I am very proud of you for thinking about your fellow students. She told him, emotion choking her voice. She placed a shaky hand on his shoulder briefly. I feel terrible, Oliver said. His teeth chattered less with the appearance of the Patroni, but it was still not pleasant. Minister Fudge has deemed it appropriate to station Dementors at Hogwarts and Hogsmeade because of the serious black threat, and he says he does not have enough Aurors. Disapproval colored her voice. Surely not around the children. Oliver protested. That has been my and the headmaster's argument for weeks now. He's unilaterally decided to ignore our advice and common sense and I quote, to be seen doing something. McGonagall fumed. You have my explicit permission to tell everyone you know. Warn the students and tell your father. Yes, Professor, I will. Oliver promised. He was beginning to feel better as the Dementors had been herded away. Professor Lupin hurried into the stadium, looked around and called a house elf. The elf appeared, was given orders, disappeared, then a diff. Errant elf was in front of Oliver and the professor, offering them both bars of chocolate and one for Jenny. All across the stadium elves bearing sweets popped in and out. Ron jogged up to Oliver in a slight panic. All right Ron, Oliver asked. He offered the boy some of his chocolate but Ron waved him off and held his own up. I'm good Ollie thanks, but we might have a problem. I've been looking for brooms. I found Jenny's over in the bleachers but Harry's has floated off and it's disappeared. Ron told them worried. I'll go with you, okay Professor. Oliver said. You go Wood, she replied, I've got Miss Turner. Oliver nodded and turned toward Ron. His hands were still shaking. Quidditch. What is it, Ollie? Why do you look like Filch kicked your puppy? Angelina asked him as she picked over her roast potatoes. Oliver heaved a deep sigh. Have any of you seen Harry? He asked morosely. Might still be in the dorm. I haven't seen him since breakfast actually, what's happened? Alicia asked him. We had a pickup game this morning against Wright, all was good and we were winning but the Ministry brought 3 Dementors to the stadium and we all were affected. Jenny Turner and White passed out and their brooms floated away. Ron found Jenny's in the bleachers but Harry's made it all the way to the Whomping Willow and Oliver broke off. Harry is he? Angelina asked horrified. Dunno. Hospital wing I guess. I'm heading there now, Oliver replied. His reply was the scraping of wood on stone as his team rose to join him. His firebolt. Oliver shook his head. I'll see how he is before I tell him. Fred, why are you limping? Oliver asked as Fred and George arrived late to Thursday night practice. I've just been released from the hospital wing. Someone cursed me when I was taking a piss. Pomfrey said it shortens the ligaments in the legs. It's borderline dark, and she reported it to Dumbledore. Fred groused. Did she sort it? Oliver asked. Yeah, I'm just sore now. It's like a permanent body-bind jinx. There's no counter-curse, which is why it's borderline. You've got to get each ligament stretched individually, and if you miss one it can rupture. Are you okay to fly? Alicia asked. Yeah, I'll just have to ease into it. Fred replied with a wince. No, you sit this one out. I was going to practice plays for if a beater is taken out soon anyway and today is as good as any. Oliver decided. Oh goody. George deadpanned. Lucky me. You can be planning our revenge while you warm that bench over there. He prodded his brother. Do you know who did it? Harry asked. I know at least 2. They were laughing as they ran around the corner. Weren't quiet about it either. I'd recognize Bull's braying laugh anywhere. They'll get theirs. Fred replied. Are you still using Lee's broom? I am. It's a decent broom, just, Harry trailed off and stared at his trainers. It's not the same, we all understand that Harry. Fred consoled his friend. Okay Lions, WH. Fred limps over there, we are going to do some suicides to warm up and try Charlie Mark 2. Oliver ordered and the players held their brooms across their shoulders and stood on the white chalk line he conjured. A corresponding line 10 meters away was the target. A second flick caused a ping to sound in the air and they were off. There was no question of how many, Oliver wouldn't tell them it was always between 20 and 25. The pings sped up as they fatigued until they were flat out sprinting and ready to commit either murder or suicide. He called them suicides to dissuade them from the former. Quidditch. A seeker could handle the quaffle as long as he didn't enter the scoring area around the hoops, and Charlie Mark II took advantage of this. The play required Harry to join in the chaser attack. It wasn't complicated enough otherwise. Charlie Mark I had Harry make 2 carries, then a reverse fade that forced the defensive chasers across the field to block Angelina's charge. The new revision Oliver had made required Harry to make a deep dive as though in pursuit of the snitch to pass close to the chaser in possession where a handoff was made. A surreptitious handoff like this was more difficult than at slower speeds. Adding in the angle and speed of Harry's approach made implementation almost impossible. The only chaser who had managed it with any success in 7 out of the 10 attempts had been Alicia. It made it a no-brainer for Oliver to appoint her as lead chaser for this move. Okay team, bring it in, Oliver called, and as they gathered around him Fred floated down from his station in the stands to join them so they could debrief. Good session today. I like this move for if we are down a player. Oliver began. To be fair Ollie, we can use it if we are down a chaser as well. We really only need 1 chaser if everyone is chasing after Harry and he lobs it back to me, or leaves it in the air for me to fly onto. I'd just mosey on through. Alicia suggested. That was my thinking, Allie. If we lose a chaser, Harry steps in. If we lose a beater, we adjust. If we lose a keeper, he paused. Well, don't lose the keeper. Quidditch. Shush, keep it down. You sure you want to come, Ollie? This isn't usually your thing. George asked. They hurt my friend, I'm not sitting on the sidelines for this one. Besides, it was you who said as it was my idea I should come along. Oliver hissed, crouching down in the cramped tunnel. I didn't say that. George denied. Yes you did. Oliver's voice rose slightly. Shush, it was me. You were in detention with Snape for that thing. Fred interrupted. Oh yeah, George smiled beatifically. Well worth the howler that was. It was. And it was Ollie's idea on how to get Bowles and Derek back for my cursing. Plus we needed 3 for this. Fred got serious. Ready? Oliver asked. George gently bumped the cage against his leg, waved his wand, and a fluttering tweet echoed through the space. What was that? A muffled voice asked. What was what? Came the equally muffled reply. Dunno, a tweet. Like those Cornish pixies from a few years ago. You're losing it. Come on, Flint said he wants us to meet him down here. Oliver reached down and gingerly opened the cage. Fred sent a gust of wind down the tunnel and George raised a barrier to guide the pixies down the tunnel towards the illusioned gap. They had agitated the pixies, then placed a silencing charm on the cage to hide their buzz. But why here though? Can't be for Quidditch. What the hell? Pixies. I told you I heard pixies. Arg, they're in my hair. They've got my wand. The panicked grunts and yells faded as the 2 boys ran away. The 3 of them sat in the dust as their chuckles echoed. They traded quick high fives. Curse my beater, will they? Oliver said. Quidditch. Today's practice had been cancelled due to popular demand. Oliver sighed. The weather had been abysmal for the last 2 weeks and even he had balked at the walk across the rain-sodden grass to the lightning-lit Quidditch pitch. They stood dressed in their jerseys, brooms in hand. Fred and George held the Quidditch chest between them. Ollie, Alicia pleaded. Yeah, theory time I think. I'll go get my mini pitch. Oliver agreed as he puffed out his cheeks. Oh thank God, Angelina whispered. Can we get changed first? I've got too many layers on. I'll cook in your little room, she said in a louder voice. Yeah okay. You two take that back to Hooch. Oliver asked the twins. Course Ollie, it's only the snakes that just dump it. Fred confirmed. 2 days prior the Slytherin team had stood on that exact spot and said, nope, dropped the chest, cancelled their session and went back to their common room. The school caretaker A.R. Gus Filch had stumbled back in from Hagrid's hut half an hour later. They had had to move the chickens to a more secure and drier area. Filch had not seen the Quidditch chest at all with his head tucked into his chest against the cold and rain. His surprised shriek had frightened the 5 first years and Professor Grubbly Plank had jumped out of her skin, distracted as they were in an attempt at luring a fat rat out from underneath a wooden sideboard. It was unknown who had cast the freezing charm on the water coating the full length of the corridor up to the Slytherin common room, but it was effective. Students all the way to the entrance hall heard Filch cackle and whoop. Quidditch. Argus Filch had fallen over the chest in the dark hall and given himself a concussion. The Slytherins had complained about biased punishment when Filch demanded to oversee their detention himself. Apparently his dancing and exclamations of revenge were inappropriate. He had made them scrub the stone floor of the corridor outside the Slytherin common room directly after dinner so their housemates passed them as they scrubbed away. Glacius. A whispered voice sounded from behind Filch's shoulder. He hipped his head around but there was no one there. When he looked forward again he whooped and hollered with joy. That's how it feel. He yelled in glee, never mind Bambi on ice, that's a Malfoy on ice. Quidditch. Harry, what are you smirking at? Katie asked her boyfriend as they trudged back to the Gryffindor Tower. Oh just a fond memory. Harry told her. Oh yeah, can I have my jersey back? I've only got 2 and this one's still damp from that last thunderstorm Ollie had us out in. Yeah of course Harry, I'll get it for you tomorrow. Katie replied with an enigmatic smile on her lips. What's this? Oliver asked. You gave her one of your jerseys. Why would you do that? I gave her nothing, Ollie. She stole it, then told me it looked better on her, Harry replied. Stole is a harsh word there Harry. Alicia scolded him gently. Borrowed. Can I have it back Katie? He asked her. No, you do know you won't be getting it back, don't you Harry? Angelina informed him bluntly. I've already sent Hedwig off for a new one. Harry confirmed. Can I have one of yours in return then? Course you can, Harry, I'll get it for you tomorrow. Katie said. Any word on a new broom? Oliver asked his seeker. Harry sighed. I was talking to McGonagall about it. She said probably just after Christmas. She owled the Quidditch shop in Diagon and there was an order queue as long as a Niffler's snout. Harry told his team. Bummer. Quidditch. Colloportus. Oliver brandished his wand as Harry entered the classroom closest to the Gryffindor Tower. Muffaliato. Angelina said in. A pale pink spell impacted on the now closed classroom door. Cave Animicum. Fred intoned also. What does that do George? Alicia asked. Haven't heard of that one. Puts up a boundary that hides us from the outside world. Fred answered. But we've locked the door. Angelina said slowly. We found it last year but haven't had the chance to use it. I'm using it now, George told her firmly. Okay. Angelina replied slowly and exchanged looks with the other chasers. The next few minutes were spent casting detection charms around the room. Finally satisfied they moved chairs into a circle and With a flick of his wand Oliver levitated his miniature Quidditch model. Another flick and the small broom riders all zipped back to line up next to the hoops. 7 red ones at one end and 7 green ones at the other. Did you change the colors, Ollie? Harry asked. Of course he did. He's obsessed with bright colors and large numbers, Angelina groused. They had done the hill run twice more. Since the lake incident, as Fred and George had dubbed it. Harry and Katie sniggered. So, our first play is, Oliver said loudly, cheeks reddening. Another wand flick followed. Hawthorne, hawkish. Ead splice with Katie dropped down with the quaffle. Fred tucks up next to her to bat away the bludger if any comes. She lifts up to sling a pass to Angie who will be here. We know that Flint, Montague, and Warrington see Angie as the bigger threat. What do you mean by that? Angelina asked in a spiky voice. For all Slytherins bang on about subtlety and cunning, they're straightforward simple blokes. You're taller and stronger than these two, therefore the bigger threat. We'll use that. Our last game had the claws marking Katie pretty aggressively. It gave you more room to maneuver, didn't it? Got you a couple of extra goals. Yeah, you're right, Ollie, sorry. I'm tired. Not sleeping too well with this black thing. A convict in our tower. Angelina shuddered. Ron's been charming his bed on a night ever since. Harry said. We still don't know why. Come on, Oliver said. Let's get through these plays and I'll beat you all at Gobstones. I haven't played since that tournament in October. You liar, Oliver Wood. Lee said he saw you at the weekend wiping out a couple of second years. George argued. Ollie, you hustler. You never told me that. Where was my invite? Alicia demanded. The two of them had a racket going to hustle the other houses of as many sickles as they could. As they close in on Angie, she'll pass to Alicia who will be here by then and should have a free shot on Bletchley's top hoop. Oliver coughed and continued. I've thought of a modification we can make to Scramble. Quidditch. Are you all packed for Christmas, Harry? Oliver asked him on the morning the first day of the Christmas holidays. No, Ollie, I'm staying here with Hermione and Ron. Merry Christmas. He offered his captain his hand. Merry Christmas, Harry, I'll see you in a few weeks. Oliver replied. Angelina and Alicia gave Harry warm hugs and ruffled his hair. Merry Christmas, Harry, they said in unison. You're as weird as the twins. He deadpanned at them. Merry Christmas. He smiled impishly. Come on, Ollie, let the lovebirds say goodbye. Angelina pulled him away. Goodbye. It'll only be a couple of weeks. Oliver said, confused as he was dragged away. You need a girl free. And again if you can't remember last Christmas. You whinged all the way home. Alicia said. Nope, not this year. I'm staying single to concentrate on Quidditch. Oliver firmly told them. Don't you mean your newts? Angelina asked him. Her eyes gleamed in humor. Bite your tongue, young lady. Who cares about stinking newts? Oliver stared at her as if he didn't know her. The chasers burst into laughter. Quidditch. Christmas Day was crisp and bright. The ceiling in the Great Hall showed a clear day. No candles were required at all to see the bacon and eggs in amongst the toast racks and teapots. The smaller table had made a reappearance as it had last year and all the castle occupants were seated around it. Merry Christmas, Professor. Harry said politely. Merry Christmas to you too, Mr. Potter, Professor Dumbledore said. Did you receive many presents? I did, sir, thank you for the woolly socks, I have them on now. Harry replied. A Ravenclaw first year sat wide-eyed. You get presents from the teachers? He asked awed. Harry and Professor Dumbledore laughed merrily. No, only the headmaster. It is a joke. He once told me that in all the Christmases he's had, no one had ever sent him the one thing he truly wants in the winter, woolly socks. Harry told the table. Indeed, this is our 3rd year now, a nice tradition I think, Mr. Potter. Professor Dumbledore added. Oh, eggnog, I did wonder if the elves were listening when I asked for some last year. Will we have Owl Post today or will it be delayed until tomorrow? A first-year Gryffindor Muggleborn asked. Ari considered it a fair question for someone whose only experience is the Muggle postal system. Owl Post never rests, young man. Headmaster Dumbledore assured the small boy. Come sleet, come rain, etc. Maybe another few minutes, but they always wait until breakfast, Mr. Taylor. Oh, thank you, Professor. Mum and Dad said they would send me some chocolates with my presents and I didn't want to wait until tomorrow. Matthew replied. If I can ask, Matthew, why didn't you go home for Christmas? Harry asked him. They're both at sea, it was an amazing opportunity for them. They're both marine biologists and when they found out I was coming here for the school year they accepted positions on a ship going to the Arctic. Matthew told them, pride clear in his voice. That was fortuitous, Mr. Taylor. The headmaster said to the boy. He regarded Matthew down his long nose for a moment, then asked the question that every magical person in earshot was dying to know. If I may, what is a marine biologist? Harry hid a smirk behind a slice of toast. The two worlds he existed in could be so remarkably different at times. Before Matthew had a chance to reply, a cacophonous hooting overrode all other sound and the owls descended. Yay, chocolate! Matthew cheered. Harry. Hermione asked from across the table. Yes, Hermione. Didn't I say Merry Christmas? Sorry, I forgot. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too. But yes, you did. Ron was just telling me about your new broom. Quidditch. Cheer up, Harry, she'll be back soon. Hermione sidled up to Harry's armchair in front of the fireplace in the common room on Boxing Day. She hoped that Harry hadn't decided he was still annoyed at her. She really had thought it was the best idea to tell Professor McGonagall about the Mysterio. A firebolt broomstick he had gotten that morning in his pile of presents. Maybe she could have approached it better. He had talked to her again by mid-afternoon, but Ron had given her the cold shoulder ever since. You've talked to McGonagall, Hermione? Asked Ron hopefully. What? No, I was talking about Katie. She replied confused. Really, why? We know when she's coming back. Ron replied insensitively. Ron. Hermione replied aghast. It's all right, Hermione, I'll use Lee's broom for the time being. He owled me yesterday. Said the twins had asked him, he has two, and said I could have the other one. Harry reassured his friend. He pulled her down into the chair next to him. They stared into the flames for a long moment. I'm sorry, Harry, an expensive present like that turning up out of the blue and no idea who sent it. You do understand, don't you? Hermione explained, worried. She chewed her lip and waited for his response. I get it, my own. It's okay. Harry smirked. Yeah, my own, we get it. Ron smirked. Hermione's eye twitched slightly. She hated that name. Quidditch. Any word on your broom, Harry? It's been almost a month. Fred asked his young friend. Think she's sick of me asking? Harry replied morosely. Lee's broom is good enough, but bloody Dementors. Why would any sane wizard think having them near a school is a good idea? Angelina said, pass me the salt please, Ollie. This was their weekly meal together. As per Oliver's standing order, once a week they would sit as a team and bond. It's not just you, she's sick of hearing from Harry. How many times did you ask this week, Ollie? Fred smirked at his friend. I'll have you know that she said he would get it back tomorrow. He sniffed. Really? Harry asked with sudden excitement in his eyes. Well, Quidditch. Do you even want us to win the trophy this year, Professor? Oliver asked Professor McGonagall after his Transfiguration class. Mr. Wood. McGonagall exclaimed, then paused. I'll see if we can get it back tomorrow. Good afternoon, Professor. Oliver said with a nod of farewell. Don't push your luck, Mr. Wood. I still haven't decided who froze the dungeons. She raised an eyebrow at him. It wasn't me, and my players haven't mentioned it. Oliver defended himself. I notice you didn't say that you thought they didn't do it. She said. Argus said he heard the spell whispered, but there was no one behind him when he looked. The headmaster's whiskers twitched when he said that. I suspect he knows something. Quidditch. And I left before she gave me a detention for breathing. Or she could have been about to laugh. I'm not sure. You all right, Harry? Oliver asked him. Harry had doubled over coughing. He gasped and took a drink of water. I'm fine, he wheezed. Wrong hole. They're still looking for who did it. I thought it was one of the snakes. Dunno about that. Still, it was almost as funny as Bull and Derek running through the castle being chased by Cornish pixies. Snape was beside himself. Magical scratches needed some special paste Pomfrey didn't have. She wasn't happy either. How those two got scratched in unmentionable places I'll never know. Alicia said with a shudder. She had been in the Great Hall when they ran in and all hell broke loose. Oliver smirked proudly. It had taken him 7 years for him to become a prankster. Oliver Wood. What do you know? Angelina had her suspicions before but called him on it now. George, this is your fault. You were meant to train him. Fred said, face in his hands. Me? When did we have that conversation? He could never keep a straight face back in Ottery. George replied unhappily. Oi. Oliver said at the betrayal. I know nothing, Angie. The three chasers and Harry just stared at him flatly. It was his idea, George said quietly. Revenge for cursing Fred's legs. Send them a letter from Flint. Get them to a quiet area near a tunnel. Put an illusion on the opening, and when they walk past, release the pixies. Fred said in a low dramatic voice. Pure genius. Ollie, you should take some of that subtleness onto the Quidditch pitch. Angelina patted the side of his head. Oi. Oliver said again as the table laughed at him. No respect. Lightning streaked across an iron-gray sky. Heavy cumulonimbus clouds pressed low overhead, and the air hung with violent potential. Oliver glanced up and cursed. He would have to cut the session short. In the dim light, he could barely see the end of his broom. The quaffle appeared just below and to his right and nearly caught him out. Oliver performed a sloth roll to snag the ball, then transitioned into a Bolivian descent to put space between him and the attacking chasers. To the bleachers, he called over his shoulder. "Ollie, what the?" Angelina screamed, apparently not impressed with his flying prowess. The Bolivian descent was an uncontrolled drop. You let the broom fall beneath you and prayed you could recover before the ground did it for you. At some point you, hopefully, re-engage with your broom and level out. It was a difficult trick to master and allowed failure only once. The team joined him when he had come to a halt under the Hufflepuff stands, and Angelina, who had been closest to him at the time of his sloth roll, made her feelings known. "Ollie, don't do that. You scared the hell out of me. It's bad enough when Harry does it, but you aren't built like him. He's small enough that he might bounce, you definitely won't." Harry looked confused. "Hey, what do you mean by that?" "Don't worry, Harry." Katie soothed him and rubbed his arm. "It just means that we're not fat." Harry and the twins burst out in laughter, the rest gave Katie an affronted glare. She showed her maturity by sticking her tongue out at them. Oliver cleared his throat. "The heavens are about to open. I'm calling it, we can do some core work at the castle." He received muttered praise and there was thanks to various gods, which he also ignored. Remo unted his broom and headed through the misty drifting rain to the Quidditch locker rooms to dump his gear. Quidditch. The change in weather conditions in the 5 minutes it took to stow their Quidditch pads and brooms was stark. The heavens did indeed open. The team cast umbrella charms and water-repelling charms to protect themselves from the worst of it, but even with these precautions their W. as a sizable puddle that pulled around their feet as they squelched inside. "Bugger, it's as bad as it was before Christmas," Fred complained as he bent over and vigorously scrubbed his hair. "Oi, Fred," Angelina exclaimed as the spray hit her. "Why do you care? You're already a big drip anyway. Also, how did you know I was Fred? I still don't know how you do it, even we get confused sometimes, F." Red said with an amused glint in his eye. "Keep your dirty boy water to yourself and I might tell you." Angelina smirked at him. She flicked her wand and all the excess water on her hair and soaked into her clothes was banished onto Fred. Fred shrieked and jumped back. "Arg, that's bloody cold." He drew his own wand, but George caught his wrist. "Hey, spray your own girlfriend." George jabbed his twin in the ribs with a stiff finger. "You better not spray me, that's definitely not my thing," Angelina said, "but I bet if you ask nicely, Allie might let you." Alicia shoved her friend in the shoulder. "Angie, don't give him ideas. You know what these two are like, they'd think it's a good idea to team up." Fred's face lit up with glee. "What a good idea." George clamped a hand over his twin's mouth. "Later, Freddie. The kids are too innocent for this kind of banter," he warned his brother. The eyes of the twins swiveled to the youngest two of the group. Harry stared at them suspiciously. But Katie had narrowed her eyes dangerously, her hand inched towards her wand pocket. "Right," Oliver said loudly. "Here and now is definitely not the place for this conversation, possibly nowhere and never is the place to finish it. Let's go to our room and get this over with. Dry yourself off, Fred, you look a bit damp." Fred threw his captain a dirty look. The hike through the corridors and up the stairs had entertainment in the form of bickering between Angelina and Fred. It wore on Oliver's nerves. Clearly, Harry and Katie had thought so too. When Oliver turned to tell Angie and Fred to cut it out, the pair had disappeared from their position at the back of the group. He almost went back to search for the wayward pair, but George stopped him and muttered to him that Harry and Katie would be there first. "How do you know that?" Oliver asked him over the noise of a full-blown argument. George's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. "You've been in this castle for 6.5 years, and you haven't accidentally stumbled on any shortcuts or passageways that weren't there before?" "Not really, although I haven't been looking." "Why, are there a few?" Oliver replied with a shrug. "Why has known about most of them since first year. For God's sake. Oi, Fred, didn't you show Ollie some passageways a few years ago?" George turned to his brother, interrupting Angelina mid-tirade. But he got lost in the same tunnel twice, so I gave up." "Pretty crap sense of direction our fearless leader has," Fred said, a slight frown on his face. Apparently he didn't like the interruption of his dispute with Angelina and turned back to her immediately. "Listen, Angie darling, I know that you don't find me funny all the time, but that does mean that you do at least some of the time, yeah." Ollie winced. That sounded very condescending. He got ready to draw his wand and cast a shield charm, just in case Mount Angelina erupted. Angelina threw her arm into the air and stomped off. Oliver let his guard down and relaxed. Fred chuckled to himself and moved into the space that Angelina had vacated. He slid an arm across Alicia's shoulders. "Allie, when we're done, how about we go find Tea broom closet on the 7th floor that Kennedy was telling me about. Fred murmured into her ear just loud enough for Oliver to hear. Alicia shoved his hand away and took a step to the side. Don't come creeping over to me after your entertainment has gone. You caused that argument, Fred. I didn't think you were that funny either. Go find that broom closet and play with yourself, they're cramped and uncomfortable anyway. Alicia stomped after Angelina and Fred kept pace with her, his features uncharacteristically serious. Hang on, Allie, what's this about? We were just joking. She knows I'm not being serious, Fred said. Just leave it, Fred. I don't want to talk about it. You keep pushing buttons until someone explodes and gives you the reaction you're looking for. Alicia glared at him and increased her pace. Fred, George called. Fred twisted to look at his twin. Leave it, mate, you know it's not worth it when their knickers are in a twist. George said. Hey, she started it, was I supposed to back down? Fred defended himself with an expression of mock offense. Yeah, you were. George muttered quietly. Oliver remained silent. He knew from long experience that it was wise to interfere with one of the rare disagreements between the twins, and that it was futile to make Fred see reason when he was in this mood. While he agreed with his chasers and should rein Fred in to prevent trouble for the team, he'd let George handle his twin for the time being. Quidditch. Oliver rounded the final corner to the abandoned classroom he had claimed in first year for Annette. That involved Quidditch and almost ran into the backs of Alicia and Angelina, who had stopped in their tracks and giggled at the scene in front of them. Harry sat on the floor, leant against the door, with his legs splayed out in front of him, and Katie sat in his lap. They were far too busy making out to notice the rest of the team's arrival. Alicia sighed. It sounded wistful, and Angelina put her hand on her friend's shoulder in a consoling gesture, while the corners of her mouth twitched. Oliver cleared his throat. How the hell did you two beat us here? The lovebirds jumped apart. Back of Harry's head hit the door with a sound that resounded through the hallway, while Katie jumped back so hard she landed flat on her back and gaped at him. Fred and George sniggered. Katie recovered enough to glare at him, although her cheeks pinked. Ollie, don't scare me like that. Where the hell did you get to? We've been here for ages and I got bored. Angelina huffed. It sounded very close to a snort. And she offered her friend a hand up. Harry had rolled to his side while clutching the back of his head. He gave his head one final rub, then pushed himself to his feet. You have the attention span of a bored gnat, Katie. Angelina said and hauled her friend up. You're like me and Allie, no patience, all action. I bet you were kissing him before you even got here. Harry blushed, and the team laughed. Oliver flicked his wand to open the door. Alicia glanced at Oliver and grinned. He braced himself for the quip that was going to come if he knew anything about the girl. Keepers are patient, they can wait. I hate keeping, keepers are boring. Alicia said in a loud stage whisper. Oliver stared at her with narrowed eyes. Now she's done it. Insult Oliver would all you like, but stay away from Quidditch in general and keepers in particular, and he would exact his revenge. You might want to tuck your skirts into your socks there, Allie. You get to do the exercises upside down. He told his chaser in his best impersonation of Professor McGonagall when she handed out detentions, thick Scottish burr included. Angelina and Katie sniggered. They'd been the last ones to suffer his preferred punishment and now knew better than to provoke him. For now. Alicia groaned. Damn it, I forgot about that. She made a motion across her mouth as if zipping it shut. Satisfied with his demonstration of authority, Oliver pushed open the door and entered the classroom, the team behind him. With another flick of his wand, the furniture scattered around the room slid against a wall and left a big space in the center. The team knew the drill by now. They had already pulled their robes off and chose their preferred patch of stone. Oliver shrugged out of his robes and pointed his wand towards the far corner. Music reverberated throughout the room, a driving beat. Katie twitched in time, George nodded like a chicken on drugs. Harry bounced on his toes, and Fred flicked his forefingers. Angelina stood with her head bowed and eyes closed. I love this song. How did you get a CD player to work, Ollie? She asked. Oliver was the last to join the circle of teenagers who bopped in place. Ah, Quidditch captain's trade secret. It's part of the charter. He smirked at her. Are we all ready? He received 6 nods in return. At least Oliver assumed that George was nodding. It was hard to tell, he still bobbed his head. He flicked his wand one last time and the entire team found themselves with their feet firmly planted on the ceiling. Arms and hair dangled straight down. Hey, Ollie, you prat. Arg. What the fuck? A chorus of yells, grunts, curses and insults were voiced from everyone, apart from Angelina, who settled for a solid glare. Bloody hell, I thought you were joking. Alicia exclaimed. Her glare matched Angelina's. It was too good an idea to pass up. He smirked. Sometimes, it felt really good to be the Quidditch captain. Let's get to work. Make sure you touch your toes. Let's start with 100. The first one finished will get a longer recovery. Oliver smirked again and reached for his laces. 1. Quidditch. 10 more. Oliver panted some minutes later. Groans and moans greeted his pronouncement and the team lurched into motion again. What Oliver had mislabeled as a core work had turned into a full set of calisthenics. The 100 ups, eye-down sit-ups was the beginning of the torture. The gasps and red faces reflected the effort it took to defy gravity. 20 Russian twists, Oliver panted, while he held a hand to his side. With a collective grunt, motion began. Sweat streaked up their bodies, darkened Quidditch jerseys stuck to backs, matted hair clung to faces and got tangled in fingers. Enough, Ollie, I've got to sort my hair out. Katie gasped. Can we move on? Yeah, you're not meant to be upside down for long, anyway. Oliver agreed. Each player pulled their wand and adopted different tactics to get down. Hold my leg, Harry. Katie said. Harry reached up and grasped her thigh. She freed his feet, and he lowered himself to the ground. He readjusted his hold on her, and she released her own feet. Harry twisted her around until she was the right way up again. Alicia watched them and glanced at Fred. Oliver and Angelina used Wingardium Leviosa on each other. They each spun like a top and were down safely. George took the athletic route. He released the magic and tried to flip onto his feet. He almost managed it, too. However, he wasn't a cat. Landing on his feet proved more difficult than he had considered. Ow! He called from the floor. Face down. Fred couldn't do anything, he was laughing so hard. He swayed and rocked so hard that he almost head-butted Alicia. Watch it, Fred, she exclaimed with a glare. George half rolled over, an annoyed look on his face. He flicked his wand, and Fred almost landed on his head. He got his arms in position at the last moment and balanced in a perfect handstand for a second. Then he toppled over backward and landed across George. Ow, Fred said. Yeah, George agreed. Katie, Alicia pleaded to her friend. Katie tugged on Harry's sleeve and they stood on either side of her and eased her to the ground. You two okay? Oliver asked the two clowns on the ground, his voice unamused. Yeah, George sighed as he tried to push himself up. No, Oliver said. Stay there, we've got push-ups next anyway. When the players had all adopted the plank position, Oliver didn't say anything. A minute passed, everyone held the position, and no one spoke. Alicia and Angelina looked at Oliver. George and Fred gasped and wheezed. Katie's gaze flicked up and down again. Oliver watched Harry, he forced stillness as his limbs trembled. It was only when Harry looked up, did Oliver speak. 20. Then 20 wides. Alicia huffed. Oliver knew she really hated push-ups. It was only Harry who claimed to like them. 20 archers, then diamonds, and we're done. The room stunk of sweat and effort by now. Oliver felt his nose crinkle at his own musk. George flipped onto his back and they were all done. The team lay still and recovered. 10 burpees, 10 mountain climbers. We're doing a pyramid, Oliver said. He was surprised there were no comments. No one liked burpees. 10. Quidditch. Angie. Harry groaned as he shuffled through the portrait tunnel. She grunted from ahead. Can you tell Ollie that I think he's trying to kill me? Angelina glanced over her shoulder. Why can't you tell him yourself? Because we're not on speaking terms anymore, Harry said. Sniggers and muttered, too right, from the rest of his team greeted his seeker's announcement. Oliver, who was just behind Angelina, smirked at them over her shoulder. Yeah, tell him, I'm committing mutiny the next time we go to that bloody room. George collapsed onto the nearest sofa. It hadn't been unoccupied, and the put-out second years complained bitterly as they were bounced up. Sorry, kiddies. My needs are greater than yours, George said, his voice muffled as he slumped sideways and buried his face into a pillow. Move, or I'll sit on your head, Fred said to his brother. When there was no response, he jabbed a finger into George's ribs, who shot up with a cry of pain. Angelina and Alicia quickly sat on either side of George before Fred could move and smirked up at him. Fred gaped down at them. For once without a witty remark. If you're not fast, you're last, Freddy boy. Alicia's smirk became wider as she crossed her legs. With a pained humph, Fred folded like a wet flag and sat on the floor. Was all that necessary, Ollie? Harry asked from his chosen position. He had sat at a homework table, face planted on the desk, and stared blankly at Katie's leg aft. She hoisted herself up to sit on the desk beside him. Of course it was, you'll thank me tomorrow, Oliver said. He patted Harry on the side of his head and made his painful way to the staircase. He doubted that anyone would thank him the next morning, he was already stiff and sore all over, and tomorrow would be even worse. Ron wandered down the stairs from the boys' dorms and noticed Harry on the table. He walked over and regarded the scene. Ollie is sat on the stairs laughing, or maybe he was crying. Did he make you jump around again? He asked. The entire team nodded as one. Pain, Fred said from the floor. I hurt, Harry said from the tabletop. Chess, Ron asked him. Okay, but you'll have to get Katie to move and put the pieces in my mouth, Harry said. No, Katie groaned. She had laid back on the table, an arm across her face. Sorry, Ron, Harry muttered as his eyes closed. Maybe Seamus wants to play. By the way, Harry, have you seen Scabbers? I can't find him anywhere, Ron asked, concern written on his face. Quidditch, Ollie, Harry called to his captain from across the table the next morning at breakfast. Yes, Harry. Oliver scrunched up his face and held a hand against his stomach. Maybe he should just whisper today. I hate you, Harry told him and turned back to his breakfast. Hate's a strong word, Hermione said. She sounded like a chiding older sister. No, it isn't, George muttered, and slowly lowered himself onto the bench beside her. Quidditch. Fred and George were sat at one of the large study tables in the Gryffindor common room, hunched over a piece of parchment, and were deep in conversation when Oliver approached. If we put the illusion here, Fred cut himself off and looked up. Hi Ollie, you need something? Another prank. Who's your target this time? Oliver asked. He shouldn't encourage them, but he could feel the corners of his mouth twitch. Ask us no questions, Fred began. And we will tell you no lies. George finished his brother's sentence. Plus, we won't have to tell you that we found the rest of the scum who cursed Freddy. He's still complaining that his left leg hurts. Need any help? Oliver asked. Scratch the part about not encouraging the twins. This was payback for an attack on the team, he would help wherever he could. Not this time, we've already asked Lee. It's more his thing than the upstanding pillar of the community Quidditch captain. George grinned up at his captain. We won't forget your kind offer, however. What did you need? Couldn't get the pitch booked for this week. Block booked by the Slytherins. MCG is going to speak to the other heads. It's the third time they've done it. So she's given me permission for something special. 5:30 tomorrow morning in the common room. Wear warm clothes. 5. Fred exclaimed. Are you trying to make us quit? George complained. Man up, Buttercup, it'll be fun. Oliver grinned at his aghast beaters and moved away to find his seeker. Quidditch. I quit, Ollie, Alicia said when Oliver climbed through the portrait hole the next morning and approached the fireplace where his chasers were huddled for warmth. It'll be fun, you'll see, Oliver said and rubbed his cold hands together. You've said that twice now, Ollie. I fail to see the fun. An uncharacteristically grumpy George loomed in the dark of the common room. He looked massive in the dim light with the extra layers that Oliver had advised. Let's go, I'm boiling. Just waiting for, Oliver cut himself off as he glanced around and saw Harry lay stretched out on a nearby sofa. All right, Harry. Fred flicked his wand to raise the light level, and Harry snatched off his glasses and threw an arm over his face. If this is more burpees, I'm quitting too, Ollie. Harry grumped from under his arm. His glasses slipped off his chest to the floor. He groped for them unsuccessfully while he hid under his elbow, until Katie took pity on him and retrieved them. Let's go, Oliver ordered. Astronomy Tower. What? Why? Katie squawked, suddenly awake. Don't we need our brooms first? You'll see, Oliver replied. Mysterious does not suit you, Oliver. We've had this conversation before. Angelina told him flatly. Quidditch. Once the still sleepy team made it to the astronomy tower, they found their brooms lined up neatly against the turret. Oliver strode over to his broom and inspected it. Just as he always did before a flight. Next to each broom was a metal tube with a screw-top lid. Fred raised an eyebrow. No chest. No mate. Flying only today, Oliver told his beater. I've been thinking about how hard we've been working. All those intense training sessions we've had since September, coupled with that truly horrific game against the Puffs. I didn't want us to fall out of love with flying. Or just burn out. He brandished his broom. It's just you and your broom this morning. We're going to fly up and watch the sunrise. Then I'm going to race you all to the lake, twice around. Then back for breakfast. The team were all smiles, and Oliver felt his shoulders relax. Harry picked up the metal tube and unscrewed the lid. Hot chocolate? He asked. Yeah, I asked McGonagall last night if an elf could bring some and put our brooms up here, Oliver replied. Harry chuckled. Don't tell Hermione, she'll lecture you about house elf rights. I've had it twice already. It's long and boring. I've heard about this. Is she really hot about it? Has she actually asked an elf? Anyway, I'll make sure I don't. Oliver said and slung his flask straw pee across his chest and slid the flask into place at the small of his back. Oh God. Don't suggest that to her, I think she's going to be worse next year. Harry groaned. Oliver took off while his play. Urs inspected their broom and filled his lungs with fresh Scottish air. He contemplated the thin strip of light on the horizon and floated in place until everyone had joined him. Cast warming on yourselves now, it'll be cold up there. We'll go up until we see the sun, then we're going to have some fun. I want to try out that firebolt, Harry. I might take back wanting to quit. Harry grinned. Quidditch. At this time of the morning the elevation they had to reach to see the sun made the castle look like a child's toy. Light cloud cover reflected the rays of light, and their faces lit up like the glory of God. Oliver flew in the middle of their formation, Harry, Katie and Alicia on his left, George, Angelina and Fred on the right. At some point Harry and Katie had drifted together and may as well have been on the same broom. Oliver felt his muscles relax at the sound of light chatter and the occasional banter of his team enjoying themselves. After 10 minutes they descended below into the dark and waited for the sunrise again. Can you cast another warming charm on me please? Katie asked Harry. The sound of her teeth chatter reached Oliver over the gusting wind. Let's all reapply it and move on to the fun part. Oliver decided. It's too bloody cold for much more of this. A flurry of charms followed, and Alicia banished the empty flasks. The first one to find the squid is the winner, Oliver announced. Then he accelerated and shouted, "Go!" over his shoulder. He laughed at the good-natured insults and cries of outrage that were snatched by the wind. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.